Come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today. So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready. Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
Let's do exactly that. So here we are. Boy, aren't we ever glad we're not in Caracas, Venezuela. Did you see the damage? We're going to see just a little bit of the aftermath here in Venezuela. Go ahead and play it. Those are giant. Look at the building. Is a whole building is cattywampus. Ouch! That's really really sad. I'm sorry. And Venezuela, it can't cut a break. It's had two Marxist regimes back to back. Went into a terrible downturn of poverty. It's amazing that in Democrat politics that they hate to disparage your generation, but oh my God, it's younger people that are voting for young Marxists, and this is Marxism. This is the people are and the earthquakes, of course, are not Marxism, but the fact that Venezuela's economy has actually fallen to about half of what it was a decade or so ago. You know, Marxism is stifling, and they've gone from two Marxist regimes in a row to and poverty to Trumpian robbery, you know, there's no way to recover from earthquakes like this, a 7.2 and a 7.5, because the only real economy they had was the oil. And now Trump is simply stealing it. He's the proceeds of the oil that is being extracted from Venezuela is going to bank accounts controlled by Trump in Qatar, having no benefit at all for the Venezuelan people. They've got nothing. He stole a country with the help of the U.S. military.
I don't know that we can't not pin this on Marxism as well. Give me a second here. Depending on when these buildings were built, it's very, very possible that these were built to lower Marxist codes. Marxism will only have very stringent building codes for earthquake-prone activities whenever it's the capitalists building them. But whenever the Marxists are having to build the buildings, then it's just get them done and get people in them, right? Just toss them up.
You know, if you look, what Marxism does is it takes everybody down to a impoverished level. And so if you looked at the Soviet Union, which I spent a lot of time in, the quality of the buildings, the quality of life under communism, Marxism, socialism is horrid. There's no prosperity, there's no freedom, there's no energy, there's no dynamism, there's nothing. It's just totally and completely depressing architecturally, and that's just pursuant also to the quality of life. The only thing that the Marxists seemed to be able to do reasonably well was build their military, and even then they weren't great at it, but they prioritized it because it was a control mechanism over the people. But this new wave in America, for example, of Marxism, this is what it brings. Now, you can't really blame this on Trump. What I can say is that because Trump has hijacked their economy and is stealing their oil and putting it in bank accounts in Qatar, that they have zero chance of recovery. But they put themselves in this position with crumbling buildings and a 7.2 and a 7.5 magnitude earthquake that's 100 miles away ought not take buildings like this and crumble them. So this is it's a very sad situation, and it's a reminder of what they're celebrating in the East Coast under the new Marxist Democrats, where they just don't get it. And You can't convince them otherwise, because the evidence and reason mean nothing to them.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it is a very unfortunate situation, and I think it's, there's a lot of interesting things I could say about it. I'm not the most informed on Venezuela, I'll say, but I do remember a number of years ago, when their economy did begin to pretty rapidly collapse, that you could see all these different pictures contrasting a nicer economic time to their economic depression. And it got so bad, I remember that it became quite an internet joke that people were trading with memes. They would print out like a picture of a meme and they would trade that rather than spend their currency because it was so useless. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but there's quite a bit of documentation of this on the internet, what insofar as what happened to them economically.
Yeah, they confiscated American investment, and the American investment may not have been all that genuine, but it was the only thing that was propping up the economy was the oil that they were selling based upon the refineries that were, and the transportation of oil that were developed by the Americans, and they stole those assets. Now in a court, they were made to reimburse the American companies, but they were such a totalitarian and relentless regime on stealing things that when you have an economy that is no longer based on the rule of law, or that no longer appreciates economics that would be considered, we would consider them capitalist, but it's really free enterprise. When they no longer value free enterprise economics, there is no investment. There is no reason for anybody to make an investment, and the government manages everything poorly. Collectivization is a death knell for efficiency. Is why the U.S. Post Office is far worse than FedEx or UPS. And this all began under Chavez, and then Maduro was the same Marxist sentiment, and it doesn't work. It has never worked. The only reason that there is a communist country that is economically growing today, although horribly mismanaged, is in China, is because China 40 years ago began the process of enterprise zones. And those enterprise zones made free enterprise possible for factories and for business under the umbrella of a communist government. But they allowed businesses to invest and people to invest with all the rights and privileges and responsibilities of free enterprise. And it prevailed. So China is a country that runs economically on free enterprise, and its government is communist. So you can see that it is possible in a Marxist country to have productive economy if the economy runs on free enterprise principles. But if the Marxists control both the economy, as they're trying to do now in New York and across the East Coast with the Democrat Marxist candidates, this is what you get. And I've spent enough time in the old Soviet Union behind the Iron Curtain and in China long before the enterprise zones were created to know this is the reality, and there is no exception to this reality.
Yeah. And I think the humanitarian crisis is yet to be seen. People have been fleeing Venezuela for a long time, trying to get, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, for sure, there was absolute crisis on the borders of Venezuela of the people that were trying to get out from underneath it. Now these people don't even have houses. They don't even have a place to sleep. And so now, and hundreds of thousands of people, just by the look of these buildings, each one of these has got to have 3,000 people in them, families that now they have to leave Venezuela. That's not like they can just go to the countryside and live in a tent, they will leave the country.
It makes me think, sorry. I was just going to say that, with a very narrow field of view that you get from this video, it is quite a substantial amount of damage. So I can only imagine the totality of the scale of what's really happened there.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of video emerging from Venezuela, but it's obviously it's devastating to see buildings of this size and this relatively modern construction that are just disintegrating. The entire facade falls off, or they lean 20 degrees, which means they have to be condemned, means that most of the buildings have probably been undermined. And if you read the most recent reports out of Venezuela, since the beginning of this year, they have gone into, and this would be dealing with the Trumpian imposed blockade and then kidnapping of their government and the imposed controls that the CIA is imposing on Venezuela while stealing their oil. They've gone into a depression that is far worse than the Great Depression was in 1929 in the 30s in the United States. So it's a combination now of decades of Marxism failing the people, robbing the people, graft. Graft and greed are, of course, a huge part of Marxism because there is no morality to it. And then now Trump holding them hostage. Yeah, this is a philosophical. I think it's Nietzsche that is the one that is saying that you shouldn't fear the man that has a library of books and reads them. You should fear the man that has one book, and it calls it a holy book and hasn't even read it. And in my view is that anytime somebody has a book that they call a holy book, whether they read it or not, the likelihood of them understanding it is about nil. Now, I've written the most comprehensive analysis that can be accomplished on the Quran. I've set the Quran in chronological order into the context of Muhammad's life, produced 5 translations of the Quran, and then explained it using the words of Muhammad and his followers in the Hadith. And I can tell you that I understand the Quran better than probably any Muslim that's alive today. And so the Muslims that go off and kill for Allah do not know what the Quran says. To believe that there is a God out there that wants you to kill everyone for him and to die killing for him, and that if you die killing for him, he's going to reward you with multiple virgins in paradise unless you're a woman, and then you get to be raped in paradise, I guess, and that if you don't agree with him, he's going to torture you forever in hell, personally torturing you. There is no way that any sane human being is going to believe that that's true. So they just don't have any clue what their book actually says. And having written 5 volumes disparaging Christianity and revealing the rational fallacies, the contradictions, the fact that there isn't a single citation from imaginary Jesus in any one of the first 14 books that were written for the Christian New Testament, and that every citation of God in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms is misrepresented, miscited, and you just have an absolute fiasco of lies. And so the Christians that tout it have no clue what the book actually says or why it's false. So the biggest issue is that even if they read it, they have no clue what it actually says. And religion is exceedingly effective at producing all manner of fools.
I don't even know that you have to read the book. Let's just take, for example, a Muslim setting in any of a Muslim country and can look around and see the absolute crap hole that they live in because of people adhering to this ideology in this book. You can take it a step further into Marxism. You don't even have to read Das Kapital to see the effects of Das Kapital in your entire life. And goes, dude, this ain't working. You know, why are people doing this?
Yeah, well, what most people don't really understand is that Das Kapital doesn't actually speak about communism. What it does, it's a very dry book that analyzes the productivity of capitalism in London. So it's really not a book that would sway anybody to do anything. It was Engels who expanded and wrote volumes 2 and volumes 3 and credited them to Marx. But the Quran and also Engels writing for Marx takes exactly the same approach, which is that, you have a crappy life. But the reason you have a crappy life is the Jews or someone else has made your life crappy. And so when they look around and they see a crappy life, this would be the case as I was in the Soviet Union. They realized that what was in the West was vastly superior to what they had, but they were told that it was the West's agenda to hold them down and to abuse them this way. And Islam, Allah claims that the impoverishment that is there is because of the dastardly Jews, and if they just wipe out the Jews, then they will have wealth. And for the first 100 years of Islam, it turned out that way, so long as you don't mind murdering 200 million people and raping and plundering most of the world. They were able to confiscate the wealth of others. The same thing is true as Marxism. It appears to work so long as you don't mind, in the case of the Soviet Union, in the case of China, you don't mind killing 100 million people and stealing everybody's property, then it looks like it worked for a period of time until there's nothing left to steal. And that, of course, is the same issue with young Democrats voting for the Marxist candidates on the East Coast. They think that everything will be great if they just steal what belongs to what others have productively made, not realizing that once you do that, then there's nothing left to steal, and you're left with a Marxist government, which is a controlling mechanism where dimwits like you are in charge of things that they know nothing about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think, going back 100 years, when you have the revolution in Russia at that time, especially relating to stealing things from those who are productive. I guess really the one aspect of that I can actually think of is the dekulakization in Ukraine, where they seized this land from productive farmers and started these collective farms and shipped everybody off to Siberia to freeze to death. And there is definitely a lot of overlap today with a lot of younger people who have a Marxist mindset insofar as their motto of "eat the rich." Yeah. And, a lot of them don't understand the implications of what were to happen if you did not have people with any degree of capital to invest to start a business or a farm, for instance, right? Yeah. And they kind of lose that critical thinking, cause and effect of where do things come from and where do they go?
Yeah, it's worse than that, because it is of young Democrats. It's about 80% favor socialism over capitalism. They don't actually recognize that capitalism and socialism and fascism and communism are all the same thing. They all use capital to develop goods and services. It's really free enterprise versus collectivism. And what they don't recognize, and this is what happened in the Soviet Union, is what happened in China. The reason that 100 million people died between the two is they starved to death. And the reason they starved to death is that they did not only confiscate the land from those who owned the land and who were working the land and producing either sheep, cattle, goats, or wheat or other farm products, food of one sort or another. The people that had the knowledge and the industry to work the land, they killed. And then the people that they said, now you're of the people, you get to go and run this land, although we own it, all proceeds we get to keep. We're going to pay it next to nothing. You're going to live in a hovel, and you have no say as to where you can go or what you can do in your life. And they have no skill sets, and they have no incentive. And they didn't grow anything. People just starved. And that's the problem with the Democrat today. The socialists have no job skills. They have no drive, no incentive, no job skills. And so if you nationalized everything, there would be nobody to work the land. There'd be no food produced. Farming is hard. Ranching is hard. And there isn't a Marxist alive that is willing to do it. And if there's no economic incentive to do it, there is no one to do it. And that's why it always implodes and people starve. It's just utterly stupid. And it's a shame that it's pervasive now in Democratic politics, where between 60 and 80% of Democrats have become Marxists. It's moronic. It's immoral, because their whole goal is to steal from those who have been productive so that they get what others have achieved, not recognizing once you've done that, you got nothing. And you've committed an immoral and criminal act. And therefore you have a society that you're now controlling that's ignorant, irrational, and immoral. No, that's just the truth. I don't care what people have to say, because you're not going to ever awaken the smiley faces of the Democrat candidates. And we're going to look at a couple of their election results that are being posted today. So this
We can
is
play this without the sound.
just play just a little bit. You can play a little bit with the sound, but just a very little bit of it.
Muslims believe that God is one, eternal, and has no son. Christians believe Jesus is the Son of God, while Muslims believe Jesus, peace be upon him, was one of the greatest prophets sent by God. Two faiths.
Okay. The Quran doesn't have any original content. Has none. The Quran begins by copying the pagan religion of Muhammad's clan around the Kaaba. And every of the 5 pillars of Islam, all 5 are exact copies of the pagan religion that was practiced by Muhammad's kin around the Kaaba. So the religion of Islam is nothing but regurgitated paganism. That's not enough to create a religion that would fool a fool. So the Muslims then Muhammad began buying Talmud stories from rabbis. And the majority of the Quran is actually regurgitated and twisted Talmud stories that Muhammad bought from rabbis. And that's what gives it its veneer of religiosity. By the time you get to the end, Muhammad had killed every rabbi and every Jew within camel's ride of wherever he was, particularly in Medina. And so he couldn't buy Talmud stories anymore, and there was still a need to flesh out the Quran. So the last 2 or 3 surahs of the Quran, they plagiarize what's called the Gospel of Thomas. And so all of their claims are derived from the Gospel of Thomas. There is no mention of a Jesus, it's Esau. And Esau would be a transliteration of Esau, Jacob's brother. And what it says about Esau's mother is actually Miriam, the mother of the sister of Moshe. So it's really twisted madness, and it's because it plagiarizes from those 3 sources, and then there's a 4th source. There were Jewish or Arab converts to Judaism in Yemen. They were called Hanifs, and it's their poetry and their rhyming phrasing that became the jingle that made the Quran popular initially. So those are the 4 sources, and there are only 4 sources for the Quran, and all 4 are plagiarized. So to say Muslims believe, you just need to say the Quran says, because it plagiarized from those 4 sources, and it got everything twisted and wrong. So there is no credibility, and there's no reason to investigate the comparative claims about a Jesus in the Quran and New Testament. There is also no Jesus in the New Testament. There is an Ayusun, and even then, the name is never written out on any 1st, 2nd, or 3rd century manuscript that has been found of the Christian New Testament. 100% of the time, it is presented with initials. So there is really no certainty as to what Paul conceived as a name for his mythical God. But it wasn't Jesus, because Jesus didn't even exist until the 17th century. So these religions have no basis to even have the argument that he wants to have. And you cannot make the claim that Muhammad was a prophet, much less that Jesus was a prophet, because, well, first, Jesus didn't exist, and he wrote nothing down. Prophets have to write their predictions down, because it's only a written prediction that matters. An oral prediction has no validity whatsoever. And because the mythical Jesus never wrote anything, he cannot have been a prophet. Now, Then you get to Muhammad. He was also illiterate. He could not write anything down, and he uttered only one prophecy, and the prophecy he uttered he got wrong, just like Paul. Paul only predicted one prophecy. He got it wrong. And both are wrong. One's wrong by 1,500 years. The other one is wrong by 2,000 years. So we don't have a prophet in either religion. There is no prophecy in the Christian New Testament other than those that are plagiarized from the prophets and that respond to Yahweh. And the single most quoted prophet is Ezekiel, and he was inspired by Satan. So there's just nothing worth even having a discussion on what they want to talk about, even if you have a handsome British accent.
Mm-hmm. It is fan fiction written on top of Paul's imaginary character. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No, the whole thing is just so utterly absurd. Mm-hmm. But you have to do what I have done to have credibility in this regard. I have written chapters about Ursay. Ursay was Muhammad's great-great-great-grandfather who came up with the scheme around the Kaaba, that religious scheme that has the Hajj, that has the prostration prayer, that has every aspect of Islam today, the way that it is practiced, all for money. And it was Ursay, Muhammad's great-great-grandfather. And at the time, it was around the Kaaba, which was in Petra. And there were 365 gods and goddesses that were all rock gods and goddesses. And Allah wasn't even mentioned until such time as Muhammad fled from Kaabaville into Medina. There were lots of names for the Islamic God, but Allah was not one of them. So the whole thing is just nothing but a con. But I've studied and I have reported exactly what Qusay believed and shown that is the 5 pillars of Islam. That Muhammad didn't invent them, that Allah didn't exist at the time, that the Quran starts off with all manner of gods, different names, but Allah's not one of them. And actually Allah, as we're saying it now, doesn't even exist in the Quran. And then you have to study the Book of Thomas, compare it to everything that is said in the later surahs about this Esau character. And you see that it's nothing but regurgitated Book of Thomas, which was so insane that it was rejected by the early church, because it genuinely is. It's a dope trip. And then you compare the Talmud stories, and they're just taken wholesale right out of the Talmud. This is what the Talmud said, written in between 300 and 500 CE, 200 years before the Quran first made it to print, and they're exact copies. And so it's obvious, and the Quran is constantly complaining against Jews for the rabbis selling Muhammad these stories. So all you have to do is compare them. And then I've also done a study of the original Hanif poetry, came to understand how the Hanifs came to be known in Kaabaville and Petra, and then in Medina because of Tuba and the raids that transpired there, and the fact that it was a Jewish community at the time. And you compare what they wrote and how it was influenced by Judaism, and how the Ar-Rahman, that name that now appears all over the Quran, was a pseudonym that was given to the Jewish converts of these Arabs in Yemen. And so you can piece together the whole thing. It's not a mystery. It is the easiest book ever to disprove.
Yeah, it's the whole Gospel of Thomas thing. It is the Bible all over again, or that's not the Bible. It's the people that say, "Oh, we found chariot wheels in the Great Dead Sea in the right place, so therefore that proves the Bible's right." "Oh, we found these scrolls in a clay pot in 1945, just like the Qumran scroll, so therefore it proves that that these should be added to the Bible." And it's like, these things are not associative, people. They are disassociative. They are not the same thing.
Yeah, they're mutually exclusive to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, God did not tell us in Debarim that the test to determine whether or not He inspired a work is whether or not it is found in a clay jar.
With
He gave
another,
us
yeah.
right. He gave us conditions that we should apply to
Mhm.
a statement to determine whether or not he inspired it or not. And I applied those to the book of, uh, of Enoch and showed no, it's not true. I applied it to the book of Joshua, not Joshua, but of who's the fellow that went into Nineveh. Uh, Sometimes you
Job.
get older, and and I applied it to the book of Job. I applied it to the book of Ezekiel, and each time that you apply it to a book that doesn't have any viable, accurate prophecy, and what you find is that it's very easy to use God's standard to Jonah as the prophet. It's very easy to
Okay.
prove that what isn't true, and Jonah was not a prophet. You read Jonah and you realize that 90% of what he's saying is inconsistent with Yahweh's position on those same subjects. This was the same thing with Ezekiel. The position was, I have 25 ways to torture and kill Jews, and 2 ways to rape them, and then I want to destroy everything that is important about the temple and build this monstrosity. And then I want to take Yahweh's 7 annual feasts and I want to change them all. And it laments over how Satan was disrespected in the garden. It doesn't really take a genius, particularly since the 2 heavenly portrayals are purely Babylonian and astrological, to recognize this book is Satan's autobiography. So you can take even the first 6 chapters of Daniel, and it's exceedingly easy to disprove it. In fact, Daniel could never get history right. The book of Esther, same thing. It's historically invalid. You can't have a book inspired by God if the history is wrong.
Yeah, Ezekiel was huge because the Babel series that came out of that, Ezekiel was huge because so many people want to hang their hat on. I mean, Judaism hangs its hat on Ezekiel for so much. I mean, so much of the
Revelation is based on it.
eschatology.
It's
Yeah, absolutely.
37 citations of Ezekiel in the book of Revelation, and none of it's true. There is not going to be an Armageddon. There is not going to be a valley of dry bones. There is no Gog from Magog or Magog War or Magog Federation. There's not going to be a 3rd temple pursuant to the designs of the Copper Con and this monstrosity that's Trumpian in its scale. None of that is going to happen. The entire book is trash. And it doesn't mean that it's not useful, because Satan is very revealing. He incriminates himself. He wallows in it, talking about how he thinks he was disrespected by God and got a bum rap in the garden. And so it's a satanic confession, but for prophecy, no, it's not.
It's interesting. I guess I have a question in this because I might be mistaken, so I'm going to phrase it as a question. But is there not a section of Ezekiel where the person who is speaking in plain text basically declares that at one point they were one of the cherubim, and he talks about his descent from the garden,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So it's like in when it's stated so simply in plain text, you would think that people would make the connection.
Correct.
But so it's very interesting in that regard that people
Yeah.
have kind of just glossed over that for millennia.
And it's
basically.
obvious because he's lamenting how beautiful he was. He was the tallest cedar, the most beautiful thing in creation, and how he was specifically wise and elegant and so far beyond the humans, and how he was one of the cherubim which was on the wall guarding the Garden of Eden, and how he was treated improperly in his view, and then he equates himself to being the king of Tyre, and how Tyre is this noble rock upon which a glorious city was built, and that he was the everlasting and eternal king, and yet that was turned to rubble, and it was so grossly unfair to him. And then he perpetrates 25 torturous ways to kill Jews, and that he has 2 chapters that are devoted entirely to rape scenes. And he has 2 chapters devoted to aggrandizing the Babylonian constellations as gods. And it's so obvious that it isn't true. It is just astonishing that people believe it. Okay, so do you know what? Do you know what? So you can play a little bit of this nincompoop. Do you know what?
You know what the pillar and foundation of the truth is? If I ask a Protestant, what's the pillar and foundation of truth? What would the response be?
The Bible?
It says the church. 1 Timothy 3:15. Say, you think Bible, right? He says the household of God.
Pillar of truth is the church, because it says so in Timothy, who was Paul's boy toy. Okay, so guess what? There is no mention of a church in Timothy or any one of Paul's letters. None. No word even that approaches church. So guess what? It can't be the church, because guess what? There is no church. There is an euangelion, and there is a ecclesia. Ecclesia means to call out. It
Not in a church, out of a
it
church.
is not a church. There is no attempt to transliterate ecclesia as if it were a title. Ecclesia and church don't sound the same. Church is from Church, who is the goddess of the Germanic religion. She's a sun goddess. Her name comes from the word circle, which you get the halos used in Christianity, and the Christmas wreaths and that sort of thing, the sunbirths that permeate so many Christian symbols. But there is no word church. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think it's been a hot minute since you said this, but I always used to remember you used to say it's like replacing Torah with tadpole. There's no correlation between the two.
That's right. It's like that's a good line. It is like replacing Torah with tadpole, and to say to go from ecclesia to church is replacing a Greek word with a meaning to call out with the name of a pagan goddess. Now you can't even go to gospel, because gospel is an invention of Paul, just like the ecclesia is an invention of Paul. And Paul goes on record in a real diatribe saying that if heaven has an euangelion, let's use gospel, it's not a translation of it, but a replacement for it. It's a tadpole for it, if you will. If heaven has a euangelion and it differs in any way from my angelion, then heaven's is false and mine is true. That means that he could not have been inspired by a God. And of course, then in 2 Corinthians, hey, oh my God, he admits that he's demon possessed. So maybe you're lying. Maybe you ought to read the book. Maybe you ought to think. And he's promoting Catholicism as the church is the basis of all of these things. And there is no basis for church. There's no basis for pope. Pope is a term from the Caesars of Rome. And the first pope really didn't exist until the 11th or 12th century. So,
does Pope come from Pater for Latin father? Pope.
Pater,
okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Because it was Octavian who became Augustus Caesar. Following the murder of Ilios, it wasn't Julius, it was Ilios Caesar, which means Harry. When he rose to power as the first emperor, he pronounced that he was a god, and he referred to himself as God, as the father of the nation. And as a subject of Rome, you had to agree that Octavian was your father, the father God of the people. And so the concept of Pope is based upon Octavian's, Augustus Caesar's pronouncement. And church doesn't exist. It's a made-up term. It was created sometime in the 4th century.
And from what I understand as well, going back to the Roman era, it was very common for those who took the imperator position to essentially declare themselves as I think the term in Latin is like the Pontifex Maximus, something like that. But
Yeah.
essentially, they gave themselves like a high priest role in their sort of
Pontifex is based upon on father, and it's the Latin word for father, and that's who they presented themselves as. It's there really is no defining line between Imperial Rome and Roman Catholicism. One evolved directly from the other. One is they're one and the same. So you either rule from politics and religion, or from religion and politics. Oh, by the way, it was interesting that the doofus there, trying to figure out what the great truth was, had to quote Paul, not his mythical Jesus.
Guess he never read Thomas, huh? Otherwise, he would know what Jesus said.
This fellow is actually fairly well informed regarding Hezbollah. He served as a liaison to the United Nations regarding Hezbollah and the desire of the Lebanese government to rid themselves of the menace of Hezbollah. The Lebanese government can't stand Hezbollah. They want to get rid of Hezbollah. But the problem is, if you're too outspoken against Hezbollah in Lebanon, you become dead very quickly. And so it's really a terrible thing. The Lebanese government would love for Israel to come in and wipe out Hezbollah. But unfortunately, you cannot wipe out Hezbollah. Wiping out Hezbollah in Lebanon is infinitely more difficult than trying to remove Hamas from Gaza. And how well did Israel do with that?
Yeah, they got
They
bigger.
destroyed Gaza,
There's
and
more
by
Hamas.
destroying Gaza, they destroyed Israel, and Hamas still stands. So the effort in Lebanon is infinitely more impossible. And we know what happened in Gaza. It became suicide for Israel to destroy Gaza, to try to eliminate Hamas, and Hamas still stands, and Gaza is now a tombstone for Israel. And in Lebanon, the task is, as I say, it's infinitely more difficult, to the point of being impossible. So you can be right all the way and say that Hezbollah exists to exterminate Jews, and that they will not stop until they exterminate every Jew. And he knows it's a jihadi organization. And I mean, this is what the Quran dictates. So my view is, since you failed in Gaza, and since you have no chance to succeed in Lebanon, then the best approach is not to continue to do what you have done that has failed and expect a different outcome. That, sir, is insane. Don't do that. You're a smart man. Don't do what's insane. Just because Hezbollah bad doesn't mean that and Hamas bad doesn't mean that the tactic of trying to wipe them out is good, because it isn't. It's counterproductive. Learn who your enemy is, read their playbook, and deal with them on the basis of what causes Hezbollah and Hamas, as opposed to the guns and the weapons of Hezbollah and Hamas. You're way too far down the track. It's like going into a hospital and saying, I've got this terrible fever, and you've got some, maybe you got cancer or something, but it just that your body's burning up. Maybe you got malaria, and rather than dealing with the malaria, they put you in a bucket of cold water to take down the temperature. That's not going to help you. You need to deal with the sickness, the disease, and the disease is Islam. So I don't care how smart you are, how much experience you have, until you can recognize that, and recognize that you failed in Gaza. You failed in what you call what you call Judea and Samaria correctly, but what the world unfortunately calls the West Bank. You failed there. You have no chance of removing a religious enemy with bullets and bombs. Stop trying to do it. All you're doing is digging your own grave.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, the enemy of Israel was the PLO. They were the ones killing Yehudim. They were the ones that were killing them in Munich and the terrorist organization. And hooray, Hamas shows up because Israel gives them guns and everything, right?
Well,
And
not
now
so
the
much
enemy
Israel,
of
but Qatar was the primary source of their weaponry and their funding. Unfortunately, Netanyahu made a tragic mistake, and this is just one of the mistakes that people that don't understand cause and consequence or unintended consequence face, and that's been the litany of Netanyahu, is that he recognized that the PLO was evil, and they are. They're deadly. They pay to slay. It's a really horrible Islamic organization, whether you call them Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, or the PLO. All three names are still active, and their goal is the obliteration of Israel. And what he thought is that he could weaken them by funding a rival organization, Hamas, funded through Qatar, to weaken the PLO and Fatah. And they did. They took now the reason that Fatah, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, doesn't have any more elections is they had an election in Judea and Samaria. Fatah would lose probably 4 or 5 to 1, and they had elections in Gaza, and the Fatah, the PLO, lost 4 or 5 to 1 against Hamas. Far more Muslims are fundamentalists than they are even would entertain being peaceful. And this is the difference between the two deadly Islamic organizations, but one is far more ruthless than the other. So Netanyahu's plan backfired. No surprise.
Islam. It was never going to work. It was Islam.
Never
Islam.
Gonna work. Never going to work, and it's foolish. And now he has destroyed Israel by trying to bomb Hamas out of existence and Gaza. You know, I get it. What the Muslims did on 10/7 was horrific, and you want to lash out, but there are better ways to lash out than to perpetrate total destruction over Gaza. That was foolish.
You know, I guess I have a thing or two to add to this one. The first thing is that obviously fighting any kind of ideological enemy, it's kind of like fighting a hydra. You know, anytime you end up lopping off a head, you have more growing back right away, especially with Islam. And it kind of makes me think of a funny quote from one of our previous prime ministers, which was, if you kill your enemies, they win. And in the case of Israel dealing with Gaza and the way they have in Lebanon, it's definitely proving the case in that way that they're only hurting themselves by acting the way they are. And I guess the second point that it kind of makes me think of is that the West has been kind of treating the Islamic nations much like the Eastern Europeans treated the steppe hordes like 800 years ago or something like that. You know what I mean? They would make friends with a clan, and they would trade with them, and they would have that clan harass other clans so they didn't join together into one monolithic, you know, like a Kublai Khan kind of situation. So it is interesting insofar as how the Islamic nations have been treated in a similar way by the Western nations. And we're kind of seeing how this is all playing out, and it's obviously going to come to a head very soon.
Yeah, it's really interesting too to see. Again, it's the younger Democrats in particular, but there's a lot of young Republicans now that have the same problem in America and certainly throughout Europe too, in youth, where they want to hold up banners of free Palestine, and that's their decree. When in fact there is no Palestine, there are no Palestinians. There have never been a Palestine. There have never been Palestinians. And what the claim really is this perpetrate genocide against Jews is what the claim really is, and yet the very Muslims that are there are the ones that perpetrated 10/7. They've been perpetrating genocide and apartheid against Jews and the world for 14 centuries. And you have 55 Islamic countries that are grotesquely advancing apartheid and who have perpetrated genocide since their beginning, and that in the first 100 years of this religion that you're promoting as a Marxist, they murdered 200 million people. They treat women as trash, and they have sponsored 50,000 terrorist attacks in the past 25 years. And your head is so far up your tuchus that you're promoting this, and you think you're moral when you do it. It's just so ironic, so moronic, so ignorant, and so grotesquely immoral that you lament for what's happened to humanity, particularly with these last two generations. Tough show. I'm sorry for a Gen Zer to have to hear, but I don't know if you heard the report yesterday where the cognitive scientist revealed that of the 5 cognitive tests that you can apply to evaluate a generation and how it is doing compared to the last generation: attention span, literacy, ability to read, desire to read, memory, exercise of judgment, IQ. There's 5 criterion that you can use, and Gen Z is the first generation to not only be underperform the previous generation on all 5. It's 3/4 of a standard deviation different, where they've literally fallen off the cliff cerebrally. We have an entire generation that has committed mental suicide.
Yeah, we're setting records.
We're setting records. Yeah,
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, setting records for stupid, and that's really bad. But that's why we figured you can't encourage people to read because they don't read, and their attention span is that of a gnat, and it's largely because of the video games and social media.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a lot of instant gratification. I think that's probably the hugest issue with Gen Z and also millennials too. It's just we don't have to wait for stuff anymore. It's all instant with the internet.
Yes, unfortunately, none of it has any value.
No.
So your gratification is dopamine. It's not real. There's no actual real gratification for anything. That's why it doesn't last. That's why you go right back and you need another fix. And no satisfaction in any of it.
One marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows later. Those are your choices.
Those are your choices. This was an amazing thing that, they want to have Marco Rubio have this pronouncement that free Palestine means death to Jews. And they create an AI of him, and it's even a crappy AI. Either he said it or he didn't say it. But who are you fooling with a crappy AI? He's almost got Spock ears too. I mean, it's just, come on, you've got to be able to do better than that if that's what you're going to be promoting. At least make some effort. This is just sickening. And it just makes me want to puke. In this particular case, the mayor is calling the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, monsters. Nothing monstrous about them. They're not even monstrous in their spending. They're not in the top 10 influencers in the United States. And there's nothing monstrous. They're not advocating killing. It's not like Islam, where it's death to everybody. It's not. They haven't committed a single terrorist act, unlike Muslims. It's not like Marxists that have led to the death of 200 million people over the last 100 years. Nothing monstrous about them. There are a lot of things monstrous about Islam and Marxism that you advocate. And so she was giving Miss Chevalier was giving her victory speech, and at the end of it, the entire audience chanted chants to Palestine, free Palestine. Why? What does that have to do with politics in New York? Free Palestine. I mean, what in the hell is wrong with you people? First of all, there is no effing Palestine. There never has been. It's an ethnic slur that was promoted by Hadrian as he was slicing people to death and roasting them alive. And it's only remembered because the Brits are anti-Semitic and they were the perpetrators of colonization, and yet you're reprising a lie of Imperial Rome that was a savage civilization and the Brits. And it's an absolute, utter lie. There is no such thing. There are no such people. And this is your political agenda? Good God, you're stupid. America can't be saved and doesn't even deserve to be saved.
Yeah, I would like for Netanyahu to offer I don't know, because AIPAC has all this money and influence. They should give like a free expense, all expense paid round trip ticket tours of Gaza. You know,
Yeah.
hey guys, you want a free Palestine? Let's let you guys. We'll take you into Gaza and let you tour for an hour or so and see what's going on there. If you survive the trip,
take this woman into Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah, let's go someplace nice.
StreamYard
Dubai,
disappeared for me. I don't know if it's on just my computer, but the StreamYard completely disappeared. Maybe it's just my machine that it went bad, but I'll let you see if you can bring it back. But maybe we have a timeout on this laptop or whatever, but it's pretty hard to do this show without being able to see the show. But it is, there we go. We've got it back, but it's just a tremendous travesty that you could have a nitwits fanning the flames of nincompoopism and making this a rallying call for a Muslim Marxist in New York. I cry for America for what it once was, because it is no more. And the sad thing is that for all of its faults, America had the greatest potential for upward mobility, no matter what your ethnicity was or where you came from. It was really the first country in the history of the world that gave everybody the opportunity for upward mobility. Because of the caste systems that were pervasive in all the rest of the world, it was never possible until the American dream. And it has even today, with all of its flaws, it has the best justice system in the world. And it has it's had the most dynamic economy and productivity in the world because for the longest time it promoted free enterprise. But these nitwits are the antithesis of that, and they're promoting everything that is the enemy of what actually made the country remarkable, made it for the time, it was the greatest place for freedom and upward mobility and prosperity and ingenuity the world has ever known. And you're gleefully destroying that because you're stupid, because you're selfish. And those who vote for them, you can go to hell because that's where you're going. And I'm not just saying that literally like you're going to Sheol. Most of you are just too stupid to have earned a trip to Sheol. You're bringing hell upon yourself.
Well, Sheol's going to be a very political and religious place. It's not just Paul that's going, right? It's going to be the
political leaders that are promoting this death to Israel. They're all going to Sheol. Absolutely. I'm talking about the ones that are just ranting in the audience.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. When I was younger, and last time I was on the show, actually, we kind of talked about the rise of political correctness, right? And I'm sure it's always kind of been around since before I was around, but it kind of came to a head and it's evolved into all these things it is today. And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that there's been, at least from when I was in high school, I witnessed a lot of performance activism, where it's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon of what's popular without actually understanding what it is. So long as there is a cause to fight for the unknown end of being progressive. I don't know what we're progressing to, but we're progressing somewhere, right? And everybody just jumps onto this bandwagon and goes for the ride. And a lot of people aren't looking at where this train ends up heading.
Yeah, it's regressing is what it's doing, and that's where it's headed. That's a picture of Venezuela today. That is what socialism, Marxism, communism brings.
Well,
and they're standing in line probably for food.
Yeah, we in the United States have very much the same thing. The difference is that people get their food on a little card, and you don't know who they are when they go to the store to buy the food. If we were to take everyone on welfare, And I just mean food welfare. I don't mean the corporate welfare or anything like, or Medicare. Everyone that was taking food welfare, the lines would be around the block to the stores if they had to go to one place to get their commodities like they used to. I mean, it hides.
You know how many food stamp accounts there are? You know how many that are on the government?
200 million. 200 million.
Well, there are 80 million accounts. I don't know how many people are affiliated with those 80 million accounts, but you would assume that most accounts have 2 or 3 people affiliated with them. So you're up well over half of America is on the dole and receiving food stamp assistance.
That's crazy. That's like double Canada's population.
Yes, I would say that on the island that I live in, it's probably 90%. That if you were to eliminate the SNAP card, the food stamp card, you wouldn't have a grocery store that was operable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And why they think that is an intelligent thing to do, it's beyond me. I've talked at length about this before. I happen to like Yahweh's strategy where you make it possible for people who are hungry, people who are homeless, people who are down and out in society to be able to survive so long as they show industry, willingness to engage. So you leave a portion of your field unharvested with the right that they have to go and harvest it. But they have to go and actually harvest it. Then they have to prepare the food and cook the food. You leave wood available so they can make a shelter. You leave wool available so they can weave clothes. You make it possible for people who are down and out in society to survive. And, my view of everything that the government does, it's just backwards. You ought not provide housing, but you should, in a community with people that are down and out, provide wood and nails and wherewithal to build shelter. And you should have health facilities that will take care of a broken arm or or give you antibiotics for a bacterial infection. But they're not going to give you a quadruple heart bypass or treat you if you are diabetic and 200 pounds overweight. And they're not going to spend $10 million to prolong your miserable life from 80 to 82. That's the way it ought to be. And we are so far from that that we have a bankrupt society. We were able to spend more than we earned because of the petrodollar, which is something that Trump has now destroyed. So you might as well
I'm kind of against free antibiotics. The reason we have tuberculosis resistant strains is because they would give the antibiotics to the homeless people and they would only take a few of them and not take the rest of the antibiotics. And now you have tuberculosis that is antibiotic resistant. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I believe that you have to have enough compassion to help people that are in a bad way, and that biological and bacterial infections have means to treat them, and we ought to be treating them and ought to be healing people that are down and out so that they're not suffering, and particularly children, and particularly people who are ill or injured for no reason of their own, and have kitchens that we have people that are harvesting food and delivering food and preparing food and serving the food and cleaning up in the kitchen that are the beneficiaries of that. I think that if you don't extract industry from people, you destroy them. It's why God was so insistent and remains so insistent, and why it's such an integral part to the Eden experience that no one has ever understood previously. But if you don't work to make a contribution, sure, could God have done everything that man needed so that man didn't need to do anything? Yeah, he had the ultimate food stamp program. He had the ultimate housing program. He had the ultimate welfare program. But when you do that for somebody, you destroy them. You make them completely dependent and uninteresting. A dependent is like having a parasite that is sucking to you. There is nothing beneficial about it. That's what happened in Eden. God said, this is not going to work. That's why he booted us out of Eden, and why we're back in this situation. He wants to find people who are willing to actually work, to make a contribution, to make life better, to make the relationship better. It's the thing that all of these feel-gooders and progressives got wrong. You destroy society. You do not make it great by redistributing wealth and welfare and food stamps and housing assistance and all this kind of thing are actually wrong. There's a better way to go about doing it. And we unfortunately have leaders that don't understand really anything that's practical or useful.
Yeah, I'm all for giving away free eggs. Okay. The difference is that I'm not going to bring them to you and cook an omelet. Okay. You want to come to my place and get my extra eggs? I got 5-gallon buckets. I'll give you full of eggs. Okay. But I'm not going to drive to your house and cook an omelet for you. So
yeah, it was kind of interesting this doing the story of Ruth and Boaz, and Boaz has was the most amazing line ever. Boy, she totally submitted herself to Boaz. She just said, "Oh my God, after a whole life of struggle and of never being understood, never being appreciated, I finally have a man that gets me, and he's going to protect me, and we're going to do marvelous things together." And she just falls at his feet. And but rather than although he says, "Okay, now that you've mentioned all of this, you come right over here, and I'm going to take care of you." But the fact is that by surrendering to him, he actually ended up surrendering to her, where he is saying to her, you stay here in my fields, you drink my water, you stay here in my houses, you have my food, my people are going to protect you, no one's going to harm you, no one's going to insult you, you have total and complete protection here. But he wanted to encourage her to do the work, to do the gleaning. And then to make certain that she would be successful, he actually told his harvesters, I want you to take some of the barley that you have wrapped in omers for transport, and I want you to unwrap them. I want you to make this an exceedingly productive experience for her, because she's been here now for 12 hours doing the work of gleaning. We're going to make certain that this is a positive experience. She's going to go home with grain, but she winnowed her own grain. She did the threshing of her own grain and left with 6 gallons of grain, which she carried back. But the whole idea was she went out early in the morning to the field and was gleaning, which means she was only picking up what the harvesters left behind. And he respected that. But that's the difference between, are you going to work or you're not going to work? And that's the reason why when she fell and said, why is it that you're respecting me? And she actually refers to herself as a Nakara, female observant foreigner, and him as a Nakar. But why are you doing this to me? And he made it really clear. He says, because Yahweh is going to finish and complete your work, and you're going to be rewarded because Yahweh is going to finish and complete your work. So it's an interesting thing that he understands that she was there to work on behalf of Yahweh, and that collectively they were going to do God's work. And it is WORK, work. That's what socialism destroys. Because what did she do at the end of the work? She carried the grain away. You don't work, you don't eat. You don't work, you don't live. And that was when you listen to Yahweh's message as he's escorting Chawa and Adam out of the garden. That's basically what he was telling them. Now, I wanted you to work in the garden. You didn't. Now, work's going to be hard, and you're going to work to eat. You're going to work to live. Work required for character. Anyway, this is from Maduro socialism to Trumpian fascism in Venezuela, and what it has wrought has been tragic. The nation is completely descended into economic collapse. Good luck, New York.
It's misery. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck, New York.
Oh, here we have our modern day Miriam.
Oh yes, that is the modern day Miriam. We're not going to play it, but if you listen to the women, the young women who have come to this conference, and the way they adore her and idolize her and venerate her, you can just see how effective religion is at creating a money-making scheme. She's making money on this, and how easily people are swept into it. It's a pile of lies. Look at this, Erica. Look on the big letters above that. Erica, and they're venerating her.
Is this Charlie Kirk's widow?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Charlie Kirk was scum. I mean, Charlie Kirk. I don't applaud his death. I wouldn't have bothered to even given him a handkerchief if he had a cold. He did two things with his life. He promoted a incestuous, pedophile, rapist who is destroying the world and who was actually Satan, because his big claim to fame was promoting MAGA. And he promoted the lie of Christianity and Jesus Christ to the detriment of the world. So he promoted two atrocious things, and that is not something that I would ever admire. And everything she has done since that time, I think, has been reprehensible. And this Erica at the women's conference, and the applause and the swooning, I'm just disgusted by how far humans have fallen.
It was interesting to me watching through this video how very progressive sounding the women were in this video. The way they talked about feminism, okay, and the way what it meant to be how it's what it meant to be female and be feminine, right? Yet bold. So therefore contradicting themselves that a female can't be bold, that those things are mutually exclusive, right? That they were always talking about how they were going to lift up God and lift up, and everything they do is glory to God and that sort of stuff, but not realizing that a woman is strong, that has nothing to do, they're just strong in a completely different way, right? This idea that they need to be good Christian women and sit in the background and be quiet and stuff, but I'm going to be a bold Christian woman. That was their whole sense. And it's like, women are bold. Women can be bold. Why do they have to say, except I'm going to be this way? That's what confused me. It sounded very, very progressive.
I am so disgusted by the lie of Christianity, and so disgusted by the influencer money-making schemes that integrate religion and politics. That all I see when I see something like this is scam, con, perpetrating lies, and it just every ounce of it I find revolting. I listened to what a few of the women said, and it just they were brainwashed.
Absolutely.
You're not glorifying God. God hates Christianity. Christianity is a counterfeit of his beloved son. You've ripped off his name. You've turned God into a man. Listen, the universe has 2 trillion galaxies. There are a couple 100 billion stars per galaxy. And under that size, God has to be at least one dimension beyond what he created. And in something of that scale, the creator of that cannot be a man. Not ever, under any circumstances, can the creator of the universe of that scale be a man. It is absolutely not only impossible, but preposterous. And what's
he want with our glory? What's he want with our glory?
Nothing. Right? We don't have any glory.
Exactly.
Why don't you go back and read Barbara Sheen? People became many. They became so reprehensible. I was disgusted that I regretted having even created them. What is the most popular religion in the world? Christianity. He is disgusted. He regrets having created you, Christian. Read the damn book.
Yeah, we got lucky. He found somebody to deploy. We got lucky. I mean, that's
Yeah, he did.
that is
Well, yeah, if it wasn't for Noach,
twice.
it'd be yes. Yeah, Noach, and then Boaz, and then Ethan Hajj Rocky, and then Boaz again, and then yada. It's all the way through. Every time the world was on the precipice of God saying, "I've had enough of this. This is over." He had his kind of ace in the hole. And his ace, as you said, we were talking about the royal flush. An ace can be high or low. He can roll. He can do either role, and God deployed him to resolve the mess that men had made, and women.
Do you get a chuckle now looking back at things, Craig, when you're thinking about the times many years ago where you'd say, "Oh, I'm just this dirty, dull, dusty, dented implement. I'm just a guy writing my books behind the scenes."
Boy, you even know the jargon. That's correct. I always used to say I'm nothing but a dented and dirty implement, and I'm irrelevant to the story. That's how I began the first book. I'm an irrelevant character here. I'm operating under anonymity as Yada, and I'm going to take you on this journey, but I have nothing to do with the story. I'm just the storyteller, and it turned out not to be true.
It is pretty funny how it played out. It's this really good example of non-linear linear storytelling, right? Like the Torah, of course, is a linear story, but it's been really cool watching you go through all of this, and you're kind of looping back to these ideas.
That's easy for you to say, pal. That's easy for you to say. I think, and it's and I'm just having fun with you, but the fact is that most people would say that if you're accepting the roles that of Choder and Nachri and Bashar and the like, and Adama Parah that God is affording you, then you're that is something as an attribute that should make you proud. But it's exactly the opposite. And I don't know how many times I've told Leah that if you're coming in with another find that has another working title and responsibility, you can go away. We've reached we've reached the end of that. It's just too much already. And with each revelation, it became more difficult and more responsibility. And finally, it got to the point where, John, what I just said, all right, God, you pushed it to the point that I'm surrendering my free will. I'm going to be that implement again. You can do and say anything you want to do and say, I'm here to do what you want done, but I'm just here. I'm relinquishing my free will. I'll use me as this tool because you pretty much put me in that spot, and I don't want to screw up. So here you go. One of the things that's interesting is that I don't think, and I think this was important to God, that if I were to go back and rewrite the introductions to any of these series of books where I made the statement that I'm just an irrelevant character and the story is not about me, but it's about Yahweh, I don't think I would rewrite them. Even though I know different now, I would not rewrite them. And the reason I would not rewrite them is that you have to start the journey someplace.
Mm-hmm. It was the appropriate perspective for the time.
Yes, and it's even the right perspective for the purpose that picks up any one of these book series. They can't start and coming home 5 and 6. You just can't start there. You can get there after reading 40 books, but you can't start there. I think it's appropriate to say I'm an irrelevant character. In fact, I think that wanting to be anonymous, enjoying being anonymous, made it possible for God to expand this series of responsibility. Now, I say that knowing that he made the decision that he was going to do all that he is doing 6,000 years ago. So I'm not so sure, but maybe he just said, all right, I've got a personality that's going to work in this regard. He'll take the responsibility to do what needs to be done. And the thing that was so amazing yesterday is we were presenting the images, really horrible images, but of the what people would call Noah's Ark. It's the Teba as a vessel of insights, which by itself is quite an insight. And as we were doing it, it's something that has just never, ever crossed anybody's mind. And that is with all of the characters in the story, all demanding proof. They all demanded a sign. Noach didn't ask for one. And Noah was given the most difficult task of all. It was a 40-year project to build a ship in the middle of nowhere with no help. And he didn't, God said, okay, it's time to build this. This is what we're going to do. And he said, okay, let's just build it. And that's the opposite of Gideon, right? The opposite of Moshe.
Mm-hmm.
So it is it's very clear that most people want a sign. And, I just watched a long video on what they call Elijah, but Elia. And boy, they ever butchered that story. But the fact is that there were times where he was really questioning who he was and what he was doing and why he was doing it. And Noah never did.
Mm-hmm.
And what that says is there is no chance that Noah was just some guy hanging around in the woods that God said, I'm going to talk to, I want you to do this. He just did it. And that means that God knew him and he knew God, and they had a relationship that they had developed over a period of time, because Noah is Chanukh. The names are the same. And matter of fact, it's they're actually written the same, Noah and Chanukh. And so it's becomes really clear that all that's the case. And I even did go into my own life, this life, where I was within a week of 9/11, and God reaches out to me and said, "This is what I want you to do." And I didn't know his name at the point. I had walked away from religion and politics, and I had a free schedule. I'd also walked away from business, so I was reasonably free. And he said, "This is what I want you to do." I never once said, "Well, you're going to need to prove yourself to me." Didn't even dawn on me to ask for that. What I realized just immediately is I'm hearing God talk to me. He's asking me to do something. I have objections and concerns, because what he asked me to do, no one had ever survived, and I had no qualifications for doing that job. So I made it very clear. Okay, what do you want? It's fair. Ask. And I figured, okay, well, I'll go ahead and ask. And when he gave me the answer and it was sitting there in my pocket, I said, "Well, that's a pretty clever trick there." And what I did is I just went off and did it, recognizing that if I had imagined it, it wasn't going to work. And if it was as real as it seemed to be to me, then we'd be where we are now.
That's very interesting.
That's sort of Noach's. I'm sure that Noach's deal, and I'm sure in my case, this is the 7th deployment.
T with terrorists is a pretty good sign, though. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
T with terrorists is a pretty good sign. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, it is.
You have Israel, the Mossad saying, "Hey, no, you're not going to do this. Sign these papers. You're going to die if
you're going to
try
die."
do this."
The Mossad agent that has met you at the airport, that's been assigned to you, you're the 2 weeks that you're begging the PA and the Knesset to allow, and the Mossad to allow you to meet with Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and Al Qaeda, and when they tell you, and he chambered a round in his Glock. It was sitting in front seat of the car. I'd already signed the paper. He had taken me to the checkpoint, and he chained Rick in his car, and he put it on his thigh, and then he put his hand on my leg. And at this point, he's a rough dude, man. He's a man's man, and so there's no foul play here. This is a compassion of a man that we'd earned some respect between the two of us. And he pounded my leg, and he says, "I just want you to know, if you're not on God's mission, you're a dead man. We will not even know where you've gone. We will never find you, and we will never admit that we've ever known you." And the way that whole that event transpired, and the way it ended, and then to do 10,000 radio interviews and receive thousands upon thousands of death threats and a fatwa from the Saudi Arabian government, and never to have to once duck. And now we're 25 years later, never once ducked, doing something that no one's ever survived. That's a pretty good sign. But it wasn't me asking for a sign. It's just the way it played out. And then being a person who's written now 40 books and delivered tens of thousands of profound insights that no one has ever seen before. And some of those insights are really profound, transformational. Some of the most profound insights in human history, and I have tens of thousands of them. Pretty good sign. So yeah, it's a strange path to have gone on this, and then to read about yourself and all the different lives that you've lived. I'm translating Boaz and Ruth, and I'm reading it to Leah again this morning. Every morning we go through, I do a read of what I translated the previous day. We just giggled. Said, that's exactly us. That's what I said to you. That's what you did. I mean, it is literally not only our lives and our attitudes, but it's exactly what we said. So you go, oh my God, this is really weird.
Yeah, there's a certain degree where it starts becoming very meta.
Yes, it does. Yeah, you're caught into a web of your own, where you see yourself and all these different lights, and then there are times when you begin to feel the memories coming back, and then you're seeing future memories. It's a real interesting experience, but that doesn't happen until you're very, very far into it. God's very clever in this regard. He with each life, you always go into it with what you need to know. And then it's your responsibility to develop it from there. And that is the proof statement. If you were given everything from the get-go, then you're not proving anything. That each of the lives are just a fake. It might as well be the garden hoe, if everything is done for you. And so you're going with what you need, and then he's relying on your attitude and your aptitude, your character, to take it from there, because you've been deployed, and each time you're consistently deliver what needs to be done. And he just knows instinctively that he can make it happen. And then, he lovingly cheats. I mean, this time there's 7 spirits of Yahweh. I would say that's probably not normal.
Yeah. At the least.
You see storms that just pass wherever I am, and you realize the Malak have been given that responsibility, or you have tens of thousands of death threats and you don't own a gun and have never ducked. Okay, it's not normal. So you do see a lot of stuff that goes on. But
yeah, it's interesting. Not normal kind of defines who we are as a collective. None of us are really fit that cookie cutter shape.
No, and that's one of the most profound things. I had actually a clip on it. I don't know if we'll find it here and before we get to the end of our time. But there was somebody that made a post that was talking about Tamim, and they wanted to talk about Tamim being perfect, and that in fact it was directed towards Noach. Yahweh said that he was Tamim. And so all the translations means that he was perfect, but that's not what Tamim means. Tamim is the plural of tamam, and tamam means to complete and finish. So what God wants is a finisher, someone who is steadfast, devoted, and consistent regarding what he wants done. And so he's looking for finishers, somebody that will finish the job, is not going to quit until the job's done, and even then won't quit. Might be rewarded briefly for a vacation, but he's going to put him right back to work again. So Noach was a finisher. That's why he was chosen. He was deployed. He was a finisher. He was not going to stop until the job was done. Boaz and Ruth are finishers. And Tamim doesn't mean perfect. God would hate perfect. If God wanted perfect, then what in the world was he doing calling Dode his beloved and his firstborn and his chosen one? Because there was no dude ever that was less perfect than Dode. Well, there were a lot of dudes that were less perfect than Dode, but Dode was pretty significantly flawed. And that's what made him interesting. It's about overcoming. It's about making mistakes. It's about growing. It's about learning. So... No, God's not looking for Tamim. God's not even Tamim. I mean, God would be intimidated around Tamim because he's not, and he wouldn't want to be, because the moment you're perfect, there's no place to go, no place to grow, nothing to accomplish. You can't even be infinite anymore if you're considered perfect. Oh, it's all about overcoming the challenges and learning and proving yourself, finishing the job. Oh my. The Apocalypse, or whatever they want to call them. So the Sumerian religion, they only want to talk about these the seven sages who evidently came down from the heavens, and no, they didn't. But nonetheless, that's what they want to talk about. What they don't want to talk about is the rest of the religion. That is the most whacked out religion ever. That religion basically says that there is religion for the kings, but for the common people, your miserable life now is going to be replaced by a miserable life later. All common people go to hell, where it's really muddy and disgusting and sooty, and you're going to work in a muddy, sooty place forever. So you might as well make the best of this, because this life is actually not as bad as the life that you're destined to, and there's nothing you can do to change that.
That's a woo.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really great. And it was into bodily resurrection, which is an impossibility. And the whole thing is just stupid. Your body is like 70, 80% water. So what are you going to do? All the water that's in your body that has been sucked up into other animals and other trees, you're into the atmosphere, you're going to reconstitute it after the bugs and decomposition have eaten away all of your body, and those bugs have been eaten by other bugs and by birds, and the birds by other predators. That you're gonna rob the cells out of every animal that has devoured your flesh, and that's going to be a bodily resurrected. And then what are you going to do? You're stuck in 3 dimensions again. You can't go anywhere. It's just utterly stupid. But in this case, the religion was based upon bodily resurrection, so that when the kings died, guided by these sages, of course, they killed everyone around the king. All of the king's concubines, all the king's wives, all the king's servants were all killed, so they'd be there when the king was bodily resurrected, and all the king's treasures. And guess what? Never worked once. So guess what? You didn't have 7 sages that were educating humanity. And the Watchers of Enoch. Enoch was written in the 5th century BCE. It was written after every one of the actual prophetic books was written. It was written by an absolute fraud. It had nothing to do with the Chinook that was taken by God. And it is just filled with all sorts of religious and pagan rubbish to promote it as if it were a parallel to the Sumerian Apocalypse, says that you've got really no clue what's true and false. You're just doing nothing but embarrassing yourself. What else do we have there, Captain, as you're trying to drive this here? So,
is this a real Marco Rubio?
Yeah, this is a real picture of little Rubio. He says, we're going to give democracy every chance to work. You can see the hollowness now behind his eyes. You just see the whole thing is sinking in. Imagine an American politician representing Trump saying, we're going to give diplomacy every chance to work. A year and a half ago, when you bombed Iran, you were negotiating with them. In fact, the negotiations were actually going pretty well. And then this time, when you started bombing Iran again, you not only negotiated with them, they caved in on your number one issue, which was they were willing to degrade their uranium that they had enriched to 60% fissile purity through the Omanis. And you bombed them the next day. So for an American representing Trump to saying we're going to give diplomacy every chance is just pure hypocrisy. It's so dishonest that it's just a shame to see the American flag in front of him on his lapel, him representing this administration, and make such a hypocritical statement. And the Iranians are very clear about it. Why would we want to negotiate with America when every time we negotiate with them, they bomb us?
Hmm. Yeah, we have surrendered. What is there to negotiate? It is absolutely absurd, right?
Well, America was forced to surrender, so that
Mhm.
it's the United States that has begged Iran for terms, and so Iran came their 10-point plan, and then their 12-point plan, and then their 14-point plan. But the 14-point plan is a surrender with a carrot. It has one carrot, which is a reiteration of something that Iran has said for the last 25 years, which is we're not going to build a nuclear bomb. And so you get a reiteration of something that's been Iran's position, and a position they've held to for 25 years, not just something they've stated. They didn't build a bomb over those 25 years. So it's a position that they have stated, restated, and held to over 25 years. That's your one carrot. So you go back to exactly where you were. And everything else is terms of surrender, vis-a-vis Versailles, boatloads of money from the United States to Iran, and ceding the control of the Strait of Hormuz to the Iranians. By the way, that deal that Trump claimed, where they're going to use the $25 billion of money that he says he's not giving them, and that he won't give them, and he's already given them through United Arab Emirates and
To buy soybeans.
Yeah, to buy soybeans. The Iranians say, no, we didn't. Not only didn't we agree to that, there'd be no reason for us to agree to it, because the memorandum of understanding says exactly the opposite. So no, they're lying.
It's interesting, the kind of levels of doublespeak that the U.S. administration goes through. You know, you have one guy saying, hey, we're negotiating peace, while they're simultaneously bombing the people they're negotiating with. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of this very popular board game from like the 70s, I think. It was made by Avalon Hill, called Diplomacy. And basically everybody's playing this game, and you're all telling each other you're going to be great friends together and accomplish things. Meanwhile, the whole game is just about stabbing each other in the back. And it's just, it's interesting too, because a lot of these U.S. presidents, like I think Kissinger, I think Diplomacy was his favorite board game, you know, to give you an idea of the kind of attitudes and disposition that people have in these sort of ideas. But like this is a game that the political people love, is basically what I'm trying to say, and it's very very on point with what's currently kind of happening.
Yeah, I'm so old that Henry Kissinger was my friend. I mean that quite literally. Henry Kissinger is my friend. We know each other very well. Spent a fair amount of time together. I have some lovely letters that Henry Kissinger has written to me. We've talked about many subjects that were of very little of I've ever shared publicly, but he was interesting in that he is one of the very few people that we know of in the modern era of recorded voices that had a voice that was so distinct that you could hear two words and you knew exactly who it was that was speaking. JFK was one of those individuals. Martin Luther King had the cadence that was unique to him. But Henry Kissinger was spectacular. One of the people that I knew quite well, I spent a fair amount of time with him too before I rejected Christianity, was Billy Graham. Also had a cadence to his voice. A spoken voice can sing. I mean, most people think that there are singers and then there are speakers, but a spoken voice can have a tenor and texture and tone and delivery style that is as disciplined and controlled as is a singer's voice to deliver the impact of a message. And Henry Kissinger was someone who knew that, and he was disciplined in something that I'm not very good at, but he knew that when you slowed way down and you let each word linger, that your impact was much greater than if you spew things faster than a person could process them. And that was his style, and it was brilliant. Now, you know, I understand that he had his issues. I think that peace with honor with the Vietnamese was a tragic mistake, and he was Secretary of State for Richard Nixon during a time where Richard Nixon made a lot of mistakes, including his mistake with China that ultimately backfired on America. But as I can tell you that everybody has their mistakes. He was really a remarkable man. He so far beyond Marco Rubio in intellect and judgment that they're not even in the same stratosphere. As for American diplomacy, just one thought on American diplomacy. The reason American diplomacy is so cutthroat is because America's embassies are staffed with CIA. And the CIA in America is probably the most ruthless, deplorable, duplicitous, deadly, destructive organization in the country and among the worst organizations within the world. Hugely counterproductive to America and the world. And there is really no significant distinction between American diplomacy and the CIA.
Yeah, I can't imagine working in this administration and having to go around and pick up the pieces of nonsense and try to explain to rational people what this idiot in the White House is saying and doing on a daily basis. I mean, poor Marco, okay, he doesn't even have his own shoes. Trump bought him shoes and he's been wearing, and they're like 3 sizes too big for him. You know, there's pictures of him with big gaps behind his.
How it's like he's recessed. His whole face is, and his eyes have shrunken in. Last night, Trump cornered at this meeting. It was Trump was supposed to sign some bilateral agreement between Democrats and Republicans on housing assistance that gave the Republicans something that they could run on to say, yeah, we're all for affordability. But it was a Democrat and Republican joint project, and he wouldn't sign it. And so he got all of the Republican senators together because they had voted against him having the authority to wage war in Iran. And he went apeshit. He literally went full Satan mode and threatened all of them and threatened them to the extent that first thing or last night after he left them, they voted in favor, they voted against restraining Trump's war rights in Iran. In other words, that the threats of Satan were so vile and so personal that they all capitulated. So that's what they're into. That's what Rubio is into. Mm-hmm. They can't resign and they can't continue. It is,
and if you do a bad job, and you do a bad job because I want out, I'm just going to quit doing the job. You get cut out and completely destroyed politically and personally. Yeah. Right.
And if you leave that administration, and very few people leave it on their own free terms, and you speak out against Trump, he is the Hannibal Lecter of politics. There's never been a politician more vicious, ruthless, and vile as he is. He is a political rapist. And because it's his own, he's incestuous politically. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. This is Socrates, and he is lamenting that equality is sickening to him, that it's a delusion, because, of course, Socrates thought that he was smarter than everybody else. Socrates and Plato were wrong about everything, literally wrong about everything. Their philosophies, their religion, their conclusions were wrong. It didn't matter if it was about democracy or if it was about the Greek religion and its gods or Gnosticism. They were wrong, and he's wrong here. Now, it is true that we are not born equal. That is a delusion, and trying to perpetrate that delusion is something that creates an illusion that everybody should make the same, live the same, think the same. And that's not good. There are people who outthink and outwork everyone else. And if those people aren't allowed to succeed, really bad things happen. But what he is wrong is that those people who are exceptional are never forced to crawl in the dirt. If they really are exceptional, they will stand up and they will stay standing up and they will be above the fray, and they're not afraid to convey what they know to be right. And so he is wrong in that regard. You are not genuinely exceptional unless you can handle the attacks that come toward everyone who stands up against wrong. He was wrong about everything and didn't.
Yeah, crawl out of the cave, man. It's just that simple. Be exceptional, crawl out of the cave.
Yeah, don't be afraid. That was the thing one of the things that John, you'll know that so many times in the past that I've talked about the importance of being that guy that is standing up against the crowd. That everybody's going one way and you're the one that's saying, no, you're all going the wrong way. And the difficulty of people having an appreciation for the fact that the majority are always wrong. And that just because they outnumber the one does not make the one wrong and them right. In most cases, almost all cases, the majority are wrong. Mm-hmm. And they've always been wrong. And when they don't listen to the one who is explaining to them they're wrong, that they all are like lemmings running off the cliff. And there are very few people that will take the attacks, the aggravation that is necessary to be that one person who says, no, you're all wrong. And let me tell you what right is and why you're wrong.
There's a lot of interesting conversations that the Greeks have. And Kevin mentioning the cave, I know we have Mr. Socrates or Socrates up there on the page. Yes. But, Plato's idea of the cave, that people are looking at these two-dimensional figures that are representations of 3D objects, and then upon finding their way out of the cave and seeing the world for how it really is, that upon returning, it is so dark that they cannot find their way back to the people who are trapped inside that cave to get them back out. And I think that's kind of a relatable concept for each of us, because even though we can walk through the steps of getting out of the cave on our own, you can't really bring anybody with you.
No, you can't. And also what he is talking about really is Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, the 3D world that we're living in is called evil, and it's a flawed world where there's this imaginary world in another dimension that is perceived to be right. That's the spiritual world. So he's in the cave, he's knocking it down between 2 and 3 dimensions, where Gnosticism will have the debate between the 3-dimensional world of the flesh and the world of the spirit, where the spirit is right and pure. This is Pauline Christianity, and the flesh is wrong. That was the Gnostic approach that was promoted by these philosophers, and it was brought in wholesale into Christianity through Paul, and it's just flat out wrong. There is no imaginary world, and the 3D world that we're in isn't wrong because it's 3 dimensionals. It's wrong because of what we're doing within those 3 dimensions. And there is the way to get to a 4th dimension, but it all is predicated on what we do in these 3 dimensions. So their whole concept was wrong. Now, I do think that it is possible for an enlightened person to bring other people who are receptive to the light. So an enlightened person can crawl out of that cave and hold up a light and speak intelligently and draw open-minded individuals to the light. So you can bring others with you. I know I'm bringing thousands.
Yeah, I guess
exactly
that's the case of what this show is all about.
Yes, that's what the show is all about. That's our purpose.
Well, 40,000 pages. I mean, no one writes 40,000 pages of material for themselves. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, because you could have very easily have done you could have, because that's me. That I'm not a guy that's going out there telling other people, hey, this and trying to get people out of a cave. No. You guys want to be in the cave? I'll now, if you show up to me and we have a conversation, then I'll tell you I'll correct the record. But I'm not writing 40,000 pages to help other people, because you could have very easily stayed in your house, done your studies, kept a journal, and worked through these insights and not shared them with anybody. Oh, well, the person that you happen to meet on the street, or someone when you went to have dinner and lunch with, talk about them. Then so it's a completely different mindset.
Or do tens of thousands of national syndicated talk radio shows being subjected to all manner of criticism to draw people out of the cave. So I think it is important that there are people willing to draw people out of the cave and expose them to the light, and to write and to speak on their behalf. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm speaking on everybody's behalf or trying to draw everybody out of the cave. I'm not. God's an introvert. He is not interested in many. He is on record saying many men are bad men. So he's not interested in many, which does make the job of encouraging people to come out of the cave a lot easier, because the expectation is tampered down, where a few good men and women is quite pleasing for him. But the job is to make certain that you've done your best to shed the light, to be as illuminating as possible, even if you're a Catan Mayor and not the Gadol Mayor, is to share as much light as you can, so that as many people as is possible have been exposed to it, so that it is their choice whether or not to accept it or reject it. And then once you've done that, then the job's over. It's then those who accept that truth, you can help grow, but you reach a point where you're not out there trying to draw more people out of the cave. Because, like, for example, right now we've reached a time where I don't have the opportunity to bring somebody that just now comes out of the cave up to speed, so that they could be useful or even harvested by God. I'd have to leave you behind. So at this point, the energy is better spent trying to cause people who are still in the cave to at least begin to question it, so that you can start building a path to the truth. And we'll leave that library and legacy for them to do so, while at the same time equipping those who have now left the cave and know Yahweh and have embraced what he is offering. And we equip everybody within the family to be more effective as witnesses and as teachers. So the job has changed a little over this last year and a half, because we're up against the clock. Now we'll go back to solicitation, if you will, during the last 3.5 years.
That's the whole point of it. Absolutely.
Right. Now we're going to have dismal results. If you're going to grade us on popularity, it'll be dismal results. It'll have a world of dwindling from 8 billion down to a much smaller number. But there's only going to be thousands amongst billions that are going to receive the benefit, that are going to accept that message, who are going to be the least bit receptive to it. So this is the reality. Most people are no longer have the capacity to think their way out of that cave.
Yeah. You give them the map, but the GPS puts them in the lake.
So Goldman Sachs is predicting the global markets for humanoid robots is going to reach 38 billion within a decade. First of all, we're not going to even make it to a decade, and the U.S. economy is going to collapse within probably 4 to 5 years. But this is the carnival barkers having the carnival owner tell you that he is endorsing the carnival barker. Goldman Sachs is not exactly an unbiased source in this particular thing, because they have built their empire on promoting AI, which drives these robots. Oh great, they can fight! Isn't this hilarious? I have not seen yet a humanoid robot that's doing anything that I would consider productive. I don't care if they can run. I don't care if they can fight. I don't care if they can dance. I'm not paying for that kind of entertainment. I'd love to see my wife dance, but not a robot.
Right.
And I wish I could run like I did when I was young, but I'm not interested in seeing a robot run. They have not created anything that has any value at this point. And you don't have any means of certifying that what you create won't be deadly. You just don't. And
Well,
so,
and I saw an
Yeah.
interesting post the other day that was talked about when AI was allowed to design its own robots, they never used a humanoid form. This is man, okay, because whatever task that robot was supposed to have, that they never used that. It needed more arms. It had a different lower center of gravity. It didn't need, the head on top for visual thing, whatever it was doing. And so we are designing these humanoid robots whenever that is not the most efficient platform to do whatever this task
Okay,
that this
but
robot is going to have.
okay, but there's a reason that the humanoid robot is being created, and that is because the world is catered to a bipedal creature called man, and
Mhm.
because of the environment we've created, whether it's the driver's seat of a car, or if it's the stairs, or it's a sidewalk, or it's the floor plan of a home, everything in our world is created for the bipedal creature of man. So if you're going to have a machine that's going to be able to enter your environment, the car, the bus, the sidewalk, the home, uh, it has to be like this because we have created our world like this. So there's two reasons for a humanoid robot. One is that it's the only way for them to enter and participate and contribute in the world that we have created. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter. The second is that it is more comforting for people to see a
Absolutely.
machine that looks like them as opposed to one that looks more like a tank or a spider. Those things that have
You put
the legs
you
that
put a
can
gun
go up and
on
down
that.
trucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You put a
they
gun on top of that four-legged thing, it's a heck of a lot scarier than this
Yeah,
two-legged
the
thing
things that
carrying a
look
gun.
like
I'm just saying.
scorpions and the like, they
Mhm.
are more threatening to the human form. And what they're going to find out too is that if you look at Optimus, Optimus is a sleeker design that looks more humanoid, particularly the head part of it, than this particular robot. And the Chinese have really developed rather extraordinary humanoid features. I mean, hair and lips and eyes and the whole nine yards for really and they of course they want to make them girls because that's more appealing to the men that would be buying them, but uh, they're the more comfortable they can make man with them, the less resistant man will be to own them. But at this point there is nothing that a robot can do in the home, nothing.
Mhm.
And they aren't worth anything, and you can't mass produce them, and there is no chip that you can put in them that's going to function appropriately. And they can work in factories, but if you're going to develop a robot for factories, and you see all the factories around the world that have robots running them, that they aren't humanoid at all, is your
Mhm.
point.
Exactly.
A factory robot is not humanoid. It has no reason to have humanoid
It's
features.
almost counterproductive to make it humanoid because then it has
Right.
the same limits that we do.
Correct. But it has to have the same abilities and limits that we do to operate within our world and to enter our homes and our cars and the like. So that's why they do it this way.
Yeah, I just never see it being commercially viable. But like, as for instance, somebody who's worked in like confined spaces, I could see a
Mhm.
humanoid robot working in a confined space as a great thing. You engineer out that kind of danger that you would be otherwise subjecting somebody
Yeah,
to.
the problem with the whole thing is that the humanoid are just robots. In farming and in factories are taking away jobs from humans. And it's the jobs that humans are the most adept at doing. And then in corporations where you're dealing with accounting or legal services or forecasting or planning or any of that sort of thing, AI is able to do a better job than most humans, and it doesn't cause any issues. It has a set fee per year that's much less than the human and doesn't have any grievances. And so it's going to replace and displace millions upon billions of jobs. And then is the thing that's thinking for us online and in social media. And so if you replace the two most important human endeavors, thinking and working, there's nothing left of humanity. Oh, Mr. Gold. Everything in your life is about to take a positive turn. Don't give up. So many good things are coming. Hashem has promised. Yeah. Why don't you actually read the text and find out what Yahweh said? Because what Yahweh said is that we're in the time of Israel's troubles and that his name is Yahweh. It's not Hashem. And over the next 7 years, it's going to be the worst, the most negative turn in all of human history. Nothing will compare to this next 7 years. So by spewing out trash in the name of a fake God, you are deceiving people. Shame on you. People need to be, particularly Jews, need to be aware that there is no Hashem. There is a Yahweh. And he has told us that as of the 22nd of May of this year, you entered the time of Israel's troubles. You are being betrayed by Trump and the United States and the world. You're being isolated, that the world is becoming wholly inhospitable to being Jewish, and that ultimately Iran is going to send millions of jihadists into Israel, and it's going to be catastrophic. So that's the truth. And you need to know that's the truth. And God's not doing that to you. You did that to yourselves. And it's because of liars like you with your Hashem antics. Nice flowers, though.
I can't touch posts like this with a 10-foot pole. I just can't. I see so much of them, and I understand this idea of having a positive mindset. I am, surprisingly to most people, a very positive person. Okay, but that is an internal thing for me. This Pollyannish idea of me being positive of just so everyone else feels better around me, it's not in me. Okay. The other part of this is that I don't know any rational person in today's world can look outside their window, can look in social media, can have any interaction and think that, oh gosh, things are going to get better. Not one person.
No.
And not one person saying it either,
No.
So
why lie to yourself?
Like this exists?
Why lie to yourself?
Yes.
Right. Why lie to yourself when it's obvious that the world is imploding and life is becoming impossible, particularly if you're Jewish, and Hashem would appeal to only Jews. So why would you say such a thing when the opposite is so obviously true? You can have a positive attitude. I have an exceedingly positive attitude. I expect the best of everything that we do and attempt to achieve, and the best of Yahweh. Yahweh loves positive attitudes. Negative attitude is the most debilitating thing, and a person can possibly have. It's the worst of all handicaps. But having a positive attitude and streaming nonsense like your life is about to take a positive turn. That's not a positive attitude. That's just simply lying. And lying is not positive. Thanking Hashem is not positive. It's lying. Even if you have a cute little heart following his name. Or not name.
I hate emojis.
Iran has informed the U.S. that despite troublemaking fake news, let's be clear. The mainstream media was agenda-driven. And the mainstream media was populated by journalist students that had been indoctrinated and had really no real-world experience. And most of what they reported was misleading, politically, religiously, and economically. They didn't have any experience. And so the mainstream media was not very good. But they had standards. Social media has no standards. Social media is infinitely inferior to what they would call fake news, the mainstream media. Infinitely, it's not even remotely comparable as to how awful and standardless social media is. It is a cesspool. So let's drop the fake news. There are no tolls or insurance costs or any other charges, all caps, of being sought or received by Iran on ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. When he put in sought, it's an outright lie, and the rest of it is deceiving. The agreement on the memorandum of understanding, which Trump says doesn't even matter, but the agreement is that for 60 days, 30 which of it don't count because it only starts when is an end to hostilities and an end to threats, and when the money is released to Iran. It only starts when the money is released to Iran, the 300 billion and the 25 billion, and is an end of all hostilities and threats, which has not totally happened. But at that point, there is 60 days that Iran has to work to clear some of the mines out of the Strait of Hormuz. And then there's 30 days following that when there will be no tolls. But after that, Iran is set by the memorandum to be in complete charge of the Strait of Hormuz, and they can work out whatever deal they wish to with the Omanis. And at that point, they can impose any manner of tolls or tariffs or environmental fees that they wish to and will. So the agreement that you have does not say what you are writing here. You are lying, and you are either unable to read or unable to think. But this is what is false information is what you are saying. So this false information negotiations would end immediately. No, it's not true. It's just flat out not true. Additionally, no money has been given to Iran. That's an outright lie too. The United Arab Emirates has already acknowledged that they've released the money. So it's just one obvious lie on top of another. The President of the United States is a serial liar. And this idea that that the money that you will be releasing, and now it has already been released, plus you've signed an agreement that says you will release it all, and immediately, even before the negotiations begin, is not controlled by you. In fact, the agreement says exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to our farmers, capital F, or anything else, and it's not going to purchase capital corn, capital wheat, and capital soybeans, most of which we can't grow anymore because we don't have access to fertilizer. But the fact of the matter is, they have not agreed to that. They have no reason to agree to that, and they have overtly stated they have not agreed to that. It is all a lie. It's just what a reprehensible soul. And to think that there are senators and congressmen that are scared to death of him and supporting him, mm-hmm. and media personnel that are trumping his nonsense, and that people believe what he writes, and they wear a MAGA hat and Trump hat and call him the God's gift to the world, when he is just he's a demonic liar. He's going to be the most destructive force in the history of the world. There is no salvation outside the Catholic Church. One thing I appreciate, though, at least they wrote this on a black background. That was appropriate. And what he says is that the word for salvation doesn't mean salvation. If you play what he has written, literally says that salvation doesn't mean salvation in this case. And the fact is that the word Yasha, salvation, actually does mean salvation. Mm-hmm. So he's even lying about what the text says to make a point, and the point that he's saying is irrelevant to his claim. There's a non sequitur between him misdefining the words Yasha, salvation, which he doesn't even know it's Yasha is the word, and then the Catholic Church being the one that provides it. There is no causal link there whatsoever. And oh, by the way, there wasn't a Catholic Church until about the 4th century CE. So what was the point of you're going to say that David's in hell, Abraham's in hell? What Noah built the damn ship and he's in hell? Which
Right.
Jesus would have to be in hell too, because the Catholic Church is the only one with any salvation, and was no Catholic Church. So your Jesus would be in hell. Your Peter would be in hell. Your Paul would be in hell. They'd all be in hell. So what in the world are you talking about? And there was no Christ. And there's no mention of a church in the New Testament or in the Old Testament.
Yeah, his point was about being made whole, and the only things that make you whole are these sacraments, right? Church, baptism,
No.
Eucharist,
No.
penance. What,
No, none of them make you whole, and yatsa does not mean whole.
At least on the bright side, they all get to be in the hole together.
Yeah, they'll all be in the
HOLE,
hole together.
Sheol.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, he did speak of that it speaks of being whole. No, it doesn't. There is no connotation associated with the Hebrew word for salvation, which is yasha, that speaks of whole. It means to deliver, to liberate, to keep from harm, and to save. That's the definition of yasha. It's in the name Yeshua ben Nun. It's in the name Yashaya. It's a very common Hebrew verb, and it does not mean whole. And there is no basis anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms for being made whole, ever. The means to redemption, if you will, is through the covenant, which they don't mention, the Bereth, and through the Moedim, which they don't mention, which God sponsors, the terms and conditions of the covenant, as delivered through the Moedim, the 7 annual meetings. They add to our lives, Pesach, the doorway to life. They remove our guilt, which is religious guilt on matzah, so that we can become firstborn children. And these are the means to us leaving the trap of 3D world that we're in now and going into 7D world where Yahweh is. And none of that is about being whole. As a matter of fact, it is to have something taken away, not added to.
Yeah.
You have your guilt taken away from you. It is nothing about whole in the concept. So not only is it a non sequitur, you don't know your etymology. And there is no correlation between the Catholic sacraments and anything being whole. Baptism is a completely pagan act, purely pagan. There is no endorsement for baptism anywhere. And even your mythical Jesus didn't baptize. So since your mythical Jesus didn't baptize, and there's no mention of baptism anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, baptism, which is a pagan rite, is purely pagan. The Eucharist is doing exactly what God says don't do. If you want to play your Eucharist, which you claim it is, that it's the body of your Jebus and it's the blood of your Jebus, God says don't eat people and don't drink blood. And there was no Jebus, and that's not the purpose of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. No, everything that you say is wrong, and it's stupid wrong. And the Roman Catholic Church is nothing but an evolution of Imperial Rome, and it is the very beast that Gabriel spoke of. You are the beast. You are Babylon. Well, Jews are just as stupid as the Goyim are. In destroying the Jerusalem temple, Nebuchadnezzar forced the Jews to do the one thing that could transform their tribal religion into a universal faith. First of all, that wasn't what the temple looked like. And if your AI isn't capable of taking the copious depictions of what it was designed to represent, then you really got a really, really crappy AI. And the fact of the matter is that that when the temple was destroyed, there was no Judaism. And there were no Jews. There wouldn't be a Jew until the 17th century, which is over 2 millennia after this fact. So there were no Jews. There was no Judaism. They did not have a tribal religion. They had the Torah, which is anti-religious. And they do not have a universal faith even now, because there are more flavors of Judaism than there are of Christianity, and they're much more different. I mean, the difference between Reform and the Haredi is, I mean, might as well not even use the term Judaism, because they're just two totally distinct. And God is anti-religious. I mean, so here you got everything wrong. There was no tribal religion. There is no universal faith. There were no Jews, and the temple didn't look anything like that.
And why was Nebuchadnezzar allowed to haul them off into slavery anyway? Because they weren't. It wasn't a tribal religion. They weren't listening to Yahweh. They weren't observing the Torah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. They weren't listening to Yahweh and weren't listening to his prophets. And so, and the same thing is going to happen. You know, there's people assigned to speak for Yahweh, and you don't listen to them, you're going to have the same fate. But this time you're not being hauled off to Babylon, you're being hauled off to Sheol. You get everything wrong. You know, there are aspects of the Torah and the prophets that remain really troubling. Aaron is really troubling. God killed everyone who was responsible for building the golden calf. The golden calf, which, by the way, is a bull, was part of the Pharaoh's Apis religion. It was all about the pharaohs and their resurrection, bodily resurrection, and that sort of thing. And God had them being given parting gifts from the Egyptians, so they would have the wherewithal to build the implements of his tabernacle and the like, and have some spending money when they get to Israel, so they wouldn't leave broke. They had worked all that time, and 80 years as slaves, they were entitled to compensation, and that's what the Egyptians gave them on the way out. And here, with Yahweh freeing them from Egypt, the first thing they did is build a religious idol. And God had the people who did it swallowed by the earth. But Aaron was the ringleader. Why was he allowed to continue?
Right.
Why before that did God form a relationship with Abraham when he was such a scallywag? He was a nothing burger. He was a terrible fellow, not very bright. And why did God call himself the God of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob, when Yishak was such a scallywag too, robbed his own brother of his birthright? Well, that was actually Shimei. It's Jacob that did that, but it was Abraham's son that was fooled and played for a fool. And what's the point with that? I mean, you look at Jacob's life, and he was controlled by Laban, went into essentially slavery for 14 years for a woman. Wasn't even a very good woman. The woman was into idols. They're really louses. They're terrible people. And the 12 children of Israel, you read what's written about them. They were horrible what they did. They begin life by selling their brother into slavery. And you look at the Exodus, and every bit of it is painful, and not Jews, but children of Israel complaining the whole way, being obnoxious. It's really troubling that God has had to endure this. And you even get to Dode, and he really becomes obnoxious too towards God. I know we managed to turn him around and restore that relationship, and he's good to go now. But oh my, what God's had to put up with us. You would have thought that he could have found better. What in the world with Aaron? Is Aaron's only role? He is the alternative.
Yeah, and he was the carrot. He was the help as far as, remember Moshe says, I don't speak very well. And so, well, your brother Aaron can't shut up. Take him with you. He'll do all the talking, right? So it was kind of Moshe's choice for Aaron. It wasn't Yah's choice for Aaron,
Yeah, I mean, I understand that Yah was frustrated with Moshe. He had given Moshe every advantage and every opportunity. And he was the only person on the planet that had been prepared to do this. And he'd been prepared 80 years ago to do this particular mission. And when God came to him after what was a miraculous birth and a really extraordinary young life, and Moshe said, I'm not going to do it. And God got exceedingly frustrated with him. And so, I understand why God says, all right, so you say you can't talk, even though I've told you that I designed the mouth and the tongue, so I might be able to make them work effectively. So that's pretty much nonsense. So I don't know why you're so reluctant. And I saved your ass in Mitzrayim. I gave you a spectacular upbringing in Mitzrayim, and brought you here safely and got you, marvelously married with a wonderful life here. And I did all that for you to be present so that you could do this. And oh, by the way, I tested your sorry soul in Mitzrayim as Joseph, a name which means I'll do it again. And your reluctance to do which you've been called to do because your mother and father told you, that was very frustrating for God. And it was even frustrating for God, I'm sure, to tell him his name because his mother was named after him.
Right.
Yeah. So Yochebed, significant to Yahweh. So it's frustrating for God. So I know that what God much really would have preferred is you're complaining that you don't talk well and your brother's a blabbermouth. But think this through. How did his brother even get there? How did his sister get there? We were told that Moshe escaped. How was he able to escape with his brother and sister?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Unless we have a divine hand. The Egyptians are not going to let a murderer of an Egyptian just walk out, and to walk out with your brother and your sister? I don't think so.
Well, and their families. I mean, it would be several people going because we ain't going back. So it's not like I'm going to go back and visit Mitzrayim, and I'm just going to hang out.
Yeah. And clearly he left with his mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe did. And then he wouldn't go. He wouldn't do it. He just said no. Yahweh was livid, as he should be. And Aaron was going to be a disaster. But, and the only thing you can think of is that the children of Israel were going to be a disaster. God knew, Moshe even knew. The reason Moshe didn't want to go, he had tried to help them once before and they turned on him. So he didn't want to go back. He knew what they were like. Yahweh knew what they were like. God wasn't saving them because of who they were. Saving them because he had made a promise and he was going to honor that promise. And the way he was going to honor that promise was through Moshe. Because he always works through men and never works alone. And therefore, to do this, he had to have that man be the one. And so the blabbermouth was there. But that's what happens if you employ a blabbermouth who will speak on his own or do work on his own initiative. You get stuff like this.
Right.
But it's really a tragic when you read who he had to work with. And then some of the times, John, I'll sit there because we talked about this story and then saying, well, he's deployed me now 7 times already. And I'm not the sharpest guy in the world either. Surely he should have been able to do better. And then you realize, well, compared to these other dudes, it's hugely superior what he got on this deal compared to what.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Hugely superior. But once again, you'd say, but this is your ace, this is your guy, and and I know me pretty well. You should have been able to do better than me. But and then you look at the other players that he tried to work with, and they're just miserable.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fumbles in the stories that are told.
Moshe was a terrible. Even Moshe was a terrible fumbler. I mean, Moshe blew it all over the lot.
Yeah, so,
Ilya, who we deeply love, he blew it all over the lot too.
yeah, it definitely makes me feel better about who I am and what I'm capable of. I'm not really.
Yes. Yeah, you're not going to worry about being perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really worried about that. I'm sorry, my cat just ran on my keyboard and muted my mic
That's
here.
okay.
But I'm more than willing to kind of make a fool of myself publicly on camera in front of everybody because it's not really a big deal. It's
Well,
not the
we're
biggest
not
deal
making
in the world.
not making fools of ourselves. And the thing too is that, well, to speak of things that people don't want to hear, that are in opposition to everything that that is being promoted as a lie, and to go onto social media in an environment where the only people that are popular are the anti-Semites and conspiratorialists and political and religious hacks. That takes some doing, and you're never going to have an audience. So it does take some courage and some wherewithal and a willingness to say, I'm going to go out and do it. Will not worry about how well we come across. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think it's definitely reassuring to be able to look back at say Moshe's fumbles, and he's a very, very important individual in this
Yes.
entire overarching story. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of space for Moshe to make mistakes, and I think similarly there'll be space for all of us to kind of stumble our way through life.
Yeah, I mean, the mistake he made when he told Yahweh, no, I don't want to do this, and over again, no. And then he finally does it. And even before any one of the signs that Yahweh ultimately delivered, he goes to Pharaoh, which would be Tutmos, the great Tutmos III. And he delivers his lines to Tutmos, and Tutmos mocks it. It makes life more difficult for the Hebrews that are working. And so Moshe turned to God and said, "You're a louse. You're a complete failure." It's what he told God. "You're a failure. Made situations worse, not better. I want out of this gig. You're a fraud." That's pretty much. Can you imagine meeting God and hearing that?
Yeah, that's it's going pretty far to go and turn around and walk that back.
Yeah,
I don't think he wants that back. There's not a lot of situations where I think I would be too keen on kind of sharing an opinion like that and then turning around and be like, "Yeah, you just go for it, guys." It's there's a lot of things that were said there that were obviously of the perspective of somebody who.
And I understand
not
getting
a
mad
great
when you're the people that you're trying to help turn on you. The only time I can recall getting frustrated with God is when these malignant mother goddess cult, whom I poured my heart into and taught and led and protected, and the ringleader is somebody that I paid $20,000 to try to help, and then she promotes the lie under the hashtagging my name that this is a cult, and yet everybody that has been part of a transfer of money with me, it's me giving them money as opposed to the other way around. And most people that are part of this relationship, I didn't even know for the first 10 years that they were reading the books. Didn't even know them. Not much less controlling their lives. Didn't even know them. And yet they would lie about this and then promote it by hashtagging my name. And I just went to God and said, this flat out not fair. This is, you're going to need to do something about this because this is just not fair, not reasonable. I'll take all of the attacks that you want to give me from the outside of the religious and the political who I'm impugning for you. And I know that's part of the territory. And I know that this is a job that will never be popular. And I'm happy to continue to do it. We've got a great working relationship. I'll continue to do this job. But this is really mean. This is when it's people that you have bent over backwards to help and that you've contributed so much to that have saying this kind of nonsense. Now they're going to YouTube and claiming that we're defaming them, and that's in violation of the rules, when all we have done is defend ourselves against the attacks that they have relentlessly launched. And even doing so, we don't mention names when they actually hashtag my name. Yeah. And you just go, This is disgusting. It's dirty. It's filthy. You need to do something about this. So that's the only time I can remember getting frustrated, but that's a far cry from saying, God, you're a louse, you're a farce, you made things worse. I want out. It didn't even come within a billion miles of even thinking that, much less saying it. And I think it's appropriate to express frustration, to say, I've spent my last 25 years overcoming obstacles and getting back up and making mistakes, learning from them, and going back at it, and putting myself on as a target. And I'm delighted to continue to do it. And I'll even lay down my life and let that piece of shit Rahab torture me. I get the whole thing. I'm all in. But yeah, this is really a low blow, and the fact that they're disparaging my wife in this way, it's so disgusting.
It's very interesting in retrospect, because if I remember correctly, this whole kind of ordeal of that individual started over them wanting to be included in a story and kind of taking a symbolic association with that. And it's very interesting now that in the last year, coming away from that, after we've watched you go back to the garden and exploring that, and then going back to the luminaries and figuring out who these individuals are, and discussion of the redeployment of certain souls. It's just it's very interesting insofar as the timing of that, because I feel as if you were to visit where we are now, with the story of, say, Ruth and Boaz and Adam and Shem, right, that I think there would be maybe more of a tendency for people to be looking to write themselves into the story. So I think it was, although it was unfortunate, it was I think it was for the best that it happened the way it did, in the timing that it did.
The Yahweh's answer to me was very close to what you just said, which is that he has endured the fractured family of his people for a better part of 6,000 years, and particularly the last 3,500 years to 4,000 years. It's just been one fracture after another, and it's irritating. And he says it's just like Hosea. Unless you're married into it and you feel that pain and you understand that pain, then you really can't. You're not in a position to speak for me, because I want somebody that is speaking for me that knows the pain that I've endured with my people. You can't speak for me without empathy. So this job requires feeling the pain, enduring the pain of a fractured family. And so God says that you had to endure it. This was important for you to endure, because then you're in a position to speak of me and for me in a way that is impassioned, because this is what I have dealt with. And then the other is, why do you think I wrote the story of Miriam in Numbers 11? Why do you think and Numbers 12? Why did I tell that story? Why do we have these stories that permeate the prophets, that speak specifically to what they did to you, and that I provided you with? Well, look at Yeshaya, when he, in 57, and he is speaking of those who claim that this harvest was theirs and didn't go, and are belly aching about it, and now are going to go to Sheol. He's written the whole story. The introduction of the Choder is not in Yeshaya. It's written by Ethan Hajraki in the 14th Mashal, and it begins by acknowledging the attack on the Choder's wife. And so God's answer was, I've defended you. I've given you scores of prophecies that speak to it. But it was important that you endure it, and it's important that I defended you. And so there we are. Are we cool now? Sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
sir.
I don't
We're
know
cool.
anyone sane that wants to write themselves into this story.
No. Good God, you don't want to write yourself into this story.
Yeah.
Look at poor Leah. She had always been anonymous. She was happy being anonymous. She's an introvert. She did not want to be known in the story at all. She was just happy as a lark, being the Ruth in my life, supporting what I was doing. That was just glorious for her. And then she comes and she presents the 31st Mashal, where she is clearly written into the story. And then we tie that into the story of Ruth and into the story of Leah. And we go to all of the absolute proofs that this is for real, that she was the one who was there, as was I. And she's now undeniably the Amma, and she is Asherah. And she is now dealing with this, and as Rich will say, knows that the first few months of it has been really, really tough. And I think it's finally now, as I'm going and rendering, because when you're written into the story, you're a target, and being a target is no fun. And finally, and then all of a sudden you have all this responsibility, where prior to that it was just fun, and now you've got responsibility. The thing about the story of Ruth that is going to help her, and at first it was a shock to her. Ruth completely surrenders to Boaz. She just falls at Boaz's feet and said, I want to be perceived as your slave. I'm not going to be like the other slaves, but I want to be your slave. I am all in. I completely trust you. You're it. And what that and she asked him, so why did you grant me what I've always wanted, which is I've been abused. You have to realize that Ruth was gorgeous. I mean, absolutely stunningly gorgeous and brilliant and bold, and so much so she was ostracized by her own people, which is why she ended up marrying a man who was named Sick and Dying, and one that died out from not of her people. Because your people wanted nothing to do with her. A woman that bold, that bright, that beautiful, she was ostracized. And she spent her whole life being ostracized. And finally she said, you get me. This is it. I'm going to die right here. I'm going to work here. I'm going to die here. And what Boaz, what he actually says is one of the most impassioned speeches ever. But he says, you were willing to azab, forsake your mother and father. Well, they were abusive to her. They didn't like her either. She's an acquired taste. Even to now, she's an acquired taste. And you rejected your own people and that religion of Moab. You rejected all of that, and you left it all to come to a people that you didn't even know before the day before yesterday. And he says, I am in a position of authority here. I have compelled everyone who knows anything about your story to tell me every nuance of your story. I know your life better than you know your life. And I've also listened to Yahweh. What he said is, God says, I'm going to finish the work that you've started. And so that means that we're going to finish the work that you've started. And that's when she just says, oh, then this is I'm going to surrender right here. And he then comes out with a speech to his people. And mind you, he's the most powerful, influential, wealthiest man of all Israel. There isn't even an Israel at the point. There is the 12 tribes, and he's in Bethlehem, and he's the leading landowner. He is the man that everyone respects. He is named as the most powerful person there is. Yahweh names one of the 2 columns of the temple after him. This is an extraordinary man. And this man then goes and he tells everyone that worked with him. He says, don't you give this woman any flack. You do not criticize her. You do not get in her way. You do not abuse her in any way. And then he says, you make certain that she is not only can glean in our fields, but I want you to go back, and what you have harvested, I want you to unharvest, so that it's easier for her to be productive in our fields. And don't you dare touch her. And then he hand feeds her. And the story is so compelling because he says, I now know that God has told me he's going to complete the work that you have started. This is our work. And it's one of those things that I had a private conversation. They're probably mad at me, but when we first met, 8 years ago, after 10 years of corresponding on about Torah subjects, she had a similar life. She was really in the wrong company and treated poorly. A beautiful woman, exceedingly bright, very bold. And yet she had been riddled with anxiety the way that she had been treated. And I provided the same thing that Boaz did, a safe place for her. And she was, at that moment, did the same thing that Ruth did, which is she says, I'm yours. And when a strong woman who is very bright does that, it doesn't make the woman, does not put the woman in a inferior position to the man. And that's how most people would read that. She bowed down right before him. She fell on her face before him. But if you hear what Boaz says next, she actually owned him by making that profession and confession and surrendering really to him. She came to own him. I mean, completely own him. And he then is her protector. He is responsible for completing her work. It is this, it's very much like when I said here a few months back that there wasn't any purpose for me to have free will anymore. Nothing just gets in the way. So I just said, yeah, well, use me as you have intended. We'll just, use every attribute and attitude and everything that you have provided in the spirits, and we'll just get this job done. And then we'll go back to free will when it's all done. I just surrender it to you. I trust you. Let's just get this done. That's basically what she did. And and what she is now doing in this process of going from anonymous, other than she's my wife and I'm a lightning rod for attacks, and that put her in a position where she was like Moshe's wife, who was attacked by Miriam and the other women, just like the mother goddess went after my wife Leah. She went from that to being a named player in the story and all the responsibility of that, and where she's producing, which she's produced 100+ songs in the last year. Who produces 100 songs in a year? Because she has a sense of responsibility, and then the vulnerability of being a named player. And now, as we are studying the Ruth situation, she realizes that I'm responsible for her. I'm her protector. I'm her safety. And we're going to do this together. But I take all the lumps. You don't. You're there, and it actually says in that description that she chawas. And so she becomes what Chawa was not: supportive, contributory. So it's a really powerful explanation. I thought that the first chapter of Ruth was as riveting as anything you'd ever read. When Naomi goes berserk and accuses Yahweh of being evil, that a realization that Naomi is Israel, and that the Amma paired with Boaz redeems this malcontent Israel, who's had these horrible perceptions of God. And I thought that was, wow, I mean, what a story that one is. Okay, that's enough for the book. And then you get into this relationship between this man and this woman, and how she surrenders to him, and how he comes up with this whole diatribe of, I know exactly who you are and what we're going to do together, such that she's for the first time comforted and knows that she's in the right place. And he then falls so hopelessly in love with her and so enchanted with her brilliance and her charm and her character that they become the most influential couple in the history of the world. Literally delivering the kinsman redeemer multiple times. So it's just an amazing story, but that's how you can go from being anonymous to vulnerable back to protected and productive. You've got to protect the vine for it to be productive. Cold snap, wind, drought, so many things, pests will destroy its ability to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to protect it. You've got to nurture it. You have to prune it, So another responsibility. This one's at least pretty and smart.
Right.
And contributory.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you'll see a difference as she settles into the Ruth story, because it's revealing. The first response was, "Oh, I couldn't have done that. Oh my God, that's exactly what we were like. That's exactly what we said to one another. That's exactly how that played out." And so it is really, really weird to see yourself in a story that's 3,200 years
Yeah.
old. But it's the only way that God could have kept the whole thing on track. Yeah, there was a brilliant plan. I really respect the plan, and He made it hard. Imagine how hard it was on Noach. Imagine how hard it was on Chinook. How hard it was on Ethan Harsraki. How hard it was on Ruth and Boaz when they bore Emmanuel, Dode, to fulfill Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you find Dode so appreciative of that support in the middle of him discussing the pain of crucifixion in the 22nd Psalm, Mizmor, and then of going into Sheol. He speaks of his father protecting him in Sheol, and his mother gave him the strength to endure Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, the appreciation is there, and you can see that the work paid off. All right, well, we'll do one more, and then we'll call it quits here. Elon Musk says that SpaceX wants to take people to the moon, Mars, and beyond. Bull. Absolute BS. He is worse than the snake oil carnival barker. Really, he is. He's nothing but a con artist. That's who Elon Musk is. He is a con artist. No one is going to live on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
The moon is actually more caustic than Mars is. The temperature variations, the lack of pressure, the radiation that is there, and the regula, the harshness of that soil. There is nothing to be gained to live on the moon, and any extensive time on the moon is going to kill everybody. And the only way you could ever survive is under 9 feet of soil that is deadly in every aspect. And so you'd have to live in a hole in the ground that you're covered with dirt. Why not just live in a cave here on Earth?
Can do that here, yeah.
Yeah. So no one's going to the moon. No one will ever go to Mars that will return. Anybody that tries to go to Mars is going to die, and die there probably either in landing or within days or weeks of getting there, and there'll be no one who ever comes back from Mars. Never. And going beyond is absolutely impossible. So, no, he's lying. He's scum.
And he's no longer a trillionaire. I think the stock IPO'd at like 150, right? And is it not down to like 79 or 60, something like that?
Yeah, it raced up to 150 in aftermarket trading, and it's fallen since that time, as they have. You got nothing. You really got nothing. You have a rocket company that has a 90% share, which is more than it will ever have, and under a 90% share loses money, and is totally dependent on government contracts. You have a satellite company that is amortizing its satellites over 20 years that don't last 4 or 5 years, and they're obsolete. And so the only reason it looks like it is profitable because of the GAAP accounting rules and the accounting of make-believe. And then you have the AI company, which he's essentially a non-player in. He's an afterthought, and everybody that's in that field is destined to lose money forever. They're only in it for control. So and the hype of make believe on Wall Street. So no, it's a nothing burger, and Tesla is with EVs is disintegrating, and that's why they're trying to go to the hype of Optimus and the robot, but he's way behind the development curve on Optimus. It's something that probably can never be mass produced, but it could never be tested in real time to make it safe. And he doesn't have suppliers for any of the components, and doesn't have a manufacturing capability of the AI chip that's going to drive it. And no one's ever been able to make an advanced AI chip in America. It's just Swiss cheese.
He is not the most wealthiest person in history, right? We know he's not, but he will forever be remembered as the first trillionaire. And I think that's all he wanted.
Well, the trillionaire is only because money is not worth anything anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, if you took back to the actual value of the currency has had 98% of its value destroyed in the last 50 or 60 years. So, you're measuring his wealth on paper that isn't real money and isn't real assets, using a currency that is worthless. So congratulations.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you already kind of answered this, but I guess the question that I was kind of leading me to this discussion is, do you think that the whole bread and circus along with Elon is for just for the investors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think it's all hype. I think he even knows that Tesla is dying, and that it's strictly this Hail Mary that he's trying to build a factory to manufacture an AI chip that has never even had an engineering prototype of it yet. And you're saying he's going to mass produce it, which has never been done in the United States, so that you can make hundreds of thousands of them, is a pipe dream. He has no suppliers for Optimus 3. He's never actually functionally made an Optimus 3. He can't test an Optimus 3 without the AI chip that he has not manufactured a single one of at this point. And so he's caught in a loop where he is expecting everything to play out favorably. And with that much complexity and innovation, is not even remotely possible. So Tesla is done, and SpaceX literally has nowhere to go. No one is ever going to Mars. It would cost trillions of dollars to get them there, and they would simply die there. And there's not going to be any habitation on the moon. The only interest in the moon is because China is playing with it for political reasons, and can do so because they're so much more efficient than we are. And America wanted to prove, just like the space race with JFK, that that those dastardly communists aren't going to beat us. And so there's no function of having anyone try to establish living on the moon. It is way too caustic and no benefit. So he's got nowhere to go. And there is nobody in the AI business that's going to make any money, because the only place to make money is government contracts, and governments are going broke and replacing humans in factories, at which point the businesses can't sell anything to people that don't have jobs, that don't have any money. And so that's not going to play out either. And there's not enough time or money to repay the debt that they have accrued. So the whole thing is it's a house of cards, and it's all jokers. And that's the biggest joker of all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. I think we have reached the, oh my goodness, we've gone 2 hours and 32 minutes. That's a long program. So, pardon?
53.
Oh, 3 hours, 2 hours and 53 minutes. I need to put on my glasses. That's even a longer program. Thank you for enduring me yakking in your ear. Thank you for your contributions, John.
Thank you. I was very happy to be invited back.
Yeah, you're very bright. You're well read. You know the covenant. Well, and you're well versed on a lot of other subjects. I mean, the Socrates references and the cave and the 2 to 3 dimensional construct, that was pretty impressive.
I know a little bit about a little bit. I'm not an expert in anything, but we'll see one day.
Yeah, of it being that broad-based and yet even deep in some of those silos. That's really impressive. Very articulate. I was impressed the first time we were together, and more impressed the second time.
Oh, thank you. I
So,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
you make a great co-host, and we have Kevin over here. So yeah, he's my boy. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, Kevin and I are pretty tight.
Yeah, Kevin definitely plays favorites, and you're one of Kevin's favorites. And yeah, I could just see Kevin's smiling there. Said, "Yep, that's my boy," and yep, I'm proud of him. So, congratulations to both of you. Thank you, Rich, for producing this, and we'll try to sneak in a luminaries this afternoon, and in between continuing to write about Ruth, if I can keep my emotions in check, because that's a really, really emotional, personal story. Yeah, we're just now having a line I just transferred to saying that Ruth acknowledges that she's a Nakara, and she refers to Boaz as a Nakar. And then you have Naomi saying that Boaz is not only a Nakar, but he is our kinsman redeemer. So it's really deeply personal, and expectations to live up to, and wow. And that's a story that I don't think anyone was ever in a position to appreciate before. And it's such a deeply personal, amazing story of a man and a woman and their people and their God, and what all transpires because of them. And these are the great grandparents of Dowd, who served as surrogate parents of Dowd when Dowd fell off the wagon, and actual parents of Dowd when he was delivered to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, Bakodim, and then brought back again to restore Dowd's reputation and Yahweh's name with his people. So the lives are forever interwoven at this point. There is no, and they were even prior to that with Noach and Shem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great story.
There's still a lot to uncover.
There's still a lot to uncover. There's, that we have 1,000 years after the next 7 years. And I don't think first of all, I don't think that based upon what I'm witnessing, that I'm going to lose my day job. I think I'll be able to continue to write these stories and these books and convey them, even as part of the vlog. I think there's a lot of people that are doing vlogs that are really, really, really good as part of the covenant. But again, I'm not in much jeopardy of being replaced. And by the way, if I were being replaced, I'd be out of way to go, man.
Right.
You go, man. You go,
Here
girl.
you go.
Yeah, here you go, man. I'll give you. Here's my mic. I'll give you my mic. I'll give you my camera. I'm out of here.
Definitely gonna have tenure for a while longer yet.
That you're stepping right up. But it is good to see what is developing. I couldn't be prouder of what we're doing as a family. It's wonderful. The timing is great, and these programs I think are helpful. I think even having the daily program, Rich, and this was Rich's request and Leia's request, and Kevin has been the mechanism behind it going, and then the co-host. Like this, talking about just all of these issues which are pertinent to people's lives today, has worked really well. So thank you, John. You're terrific. Thank you, Kevin. Goodbye, Mr. Mux. Go and fool somebody else. There's always a fool to fool, and you have certainly become expert at doing so. All right, Rich will give it a close. Wookie is saying it's time to go stretch our legs. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.